but thy law do I love.
Thou art my hiding place, my shield. I hope in thy word. Depart from me, ye evildoers, for I will keep the commandments of my God. I hate vain thoughts, but thy law do I love. I hate vain thoughts, but thy law do I love. Uphold me according unto thy word, that I may live. And let me not be ashamed of my hope. Hold thou me up, and I shall be safe, and I will have respect unto thy statutes continually. I hate vain thoughts, but thy law do I love. I hate vain thoughts, but thy law do I love. Thou hast trodden down all them that are from thy statutes, for their deceit is falsehood. Thou puttest away all the wicked of the earth like dross. Therefore I love thy testimonies. My flesh trembleth for fear of thee, and I am afraid of thy judgments. I hate vain thoughts, but thy law do I love.
consume me upon earth, but I forsook not thy precepts. Quicken me after thy loving kindness, so shall I keep the testimony of thy name.
4, 3, 2, 1. Then a log.
America used to be based on the Bible, that is. It was scripture that watered the colonial soils of America. Now, of course, tiny hats would have you believe we were a secular nation, but Connecticut said, worship any other god but the Lord God, he shall be put to death. Idolatry, death. Witchcraft, burnt with fire. Sodomy, death. Incest, death again. Rape, straight to death. Curse your parents, believe it or not, death. This country don't play. There was no such thing as the god of water goo-goo, no Hanukkah, no bar mitzvahs, no Diwali, just Bibles, pews, and the people hungering and thirsting for God's righteousness. The Second Amendment was there to protect our Christian faith, not destroy it. In God we trust was on the money. Yet, the ideas of making our federal government agnostic have now been twisted into a revisionist history. We've totally lost our cultural identity. You know, it was Obama who once said, quote, whatever we once were, we are no longer a Christian nation. Well, you know what? Speak for your faggoty self. We will be Christian again, and it's time to give America the Baptist bias.
Thanks for joining us on the Baptist Bias. I'm your host, Pastor Shelley, and we really thank our audience. You know, it's Thanksgiving week, and there's a lot to be thankful for. I'm glad that I live in America. I'm glad that I still have an opportunity to have my King James Bible and to be a Baptist. I'm thankful for the new IFB. I'm thankful for having great friends like Pastor Bruce Mejia, Pastor Stephen Anderson, and of course, one of my good friends, Pastor Dillon, is going to be joining us this evening. We've got a special show tonight. We have a special guest as well. We're going to be talking about America, America's history. We're going to be talking about the Christian influence on that and where politics is really headed for the future. But I'm here with my co-host, Ben the Baptist. How's it going, Ben?
It's going great. Looking forward to the show tonight. I feel like there's so much confusion on this topic, and there's a lot of lies as well that people tell about the true founding of this nation in terms of what was the ideological bedrock on which the United States was built. I think we're going to help to clear up some of that confusion and set the record straight on that and talk about a whole host of very important issues here on this show. So thanks for having me as per usual, Pastor Shelley. I appreciate it.
At the end, to make sure that you're a legit citizen, you're going to have to sing God Bless America, just to make sure that you're a legit citizen. Is that okay?
You know what? If that's what I got to do, let's do it. I don't know the word. I don't know all the words though, so I'll have to look up the lyrics. But
I really love that been a log, and you know, I have to say, I have to appreciate. I got this shirt on. I don't know if you can zoom in or at least show the full screen. I got the Laws of Connecticut of 1673 shirt. So right here, yep. Someone made me. I'm pumped for this show, and I'm pumped about our guest. We have Pastor Dillon Oz back on with us again this week. He's really excited about this topic, loves this topic about American history. How's it going, Pastor Oz? For some reason, we can't hear you. Let's just make sure. Sorry. We want to make sure we're not having a technical issue.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
All right, that was on me. Thanks so much for having me on. Really excited to be here. And this is a topic that I really love and have loved since I was a child. So thanks for having me on.
Also, we have another special guest, Jeb Baugh, which I've seen him on another podcast. a young guy who's interested in politics, and want to invite him on the show. And we don't know exactly, that much about him, but we'd love to have him on the show and just have a fresh perspective. So how's it going, Jeb? Sorry again, he got muted too. My apologies. Want to make sure we get one more sec. It might be something you have to unmute on your side. Just double checking.
I think
Wait.
there it is.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
got you.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Loud and clear.
Yeah,
How's it going, Jeb?
Okay. I'm doing great. I really appreciate you guys having me on. I'm looking forward to it.
Now, tell us just a little bit about yourself, just so our audience, because you're kind of new to our show, new to some of our audience. We just want to just hear a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm a University of North Dakota student here for aviation. I'm originally from North Dakota, but I lived in Texas for a large portion of my life. Lived in Texas for middle school, high school, and then came back up to North Dakota for college. I think a lot of that shaped my political beliefs. I spoke at the TPUSA event. I questioned Glenn Beck, why are we supporting Israel when Israel's doing all this, bad stuff to us? And a clip of that kind of went viral. And I was like, well, maybe I should start posting videos because I've always wanted to get into politics. Politics has always been my true passion. I think I have a decent understanding of history, philosophy, anthropology, and somewhat religion. Not my strongest topic, though.
That's cool. What part of Texas are you from?
East Texas, right by
Okay.
Arkansas and Louisiana.
Nice. All right. So we're going to go ahead and let's bring us up all on the screen here. And I want to kind of just go through just some different things, just like just the basics, just the foundation of our country, and kind of get, our panel in here, get a conversation going. Because at the end of the day, it seems like, when you go to college, when you go to universities, you're hearing just a wide array of ideas. And it seems like there's a lot of crazy ideas about what happened in our history. And so I just thought it'd be beneficial, kind of helpful to talk a little bit about just America in general. In 1607, we have Jamestown being founded. And of course, we use a King James Bible. It's translated in 1611. A lot of things are named after King James specifically and his influence. So obviously 1607, hey, they're naming the first settlement Jamestown after King James. In fact, the first Baptist church in history is in 1609 with John Smith in Amsterdam. And, I want to show a charter of New England. It's one of the first charters. It's one of the first colonies that's kind of being formed in early America. But I want to pull this up on my screen. This is the charter in 1620. Now, notice it's addressing itself to King James. And look at just the titling, just the labeling here. As it addresses James by the grace of God, King of England. It says, and Scotland, France, and Ireland, defender of the faith. That's like the first, real title that they're kind of giving this guy. Obviously he's the king, but then the second thing is he's the defender of the faith. I kind of have highlighted down here. Notice he says, we, according to our princely inclination, favoring much their worthy disposition, in hope thereby to advance the enlargement of Christian religion to the glory of God Almighty. So we're talking about one of the first colonies established in America, writing its charter to the king. And of course, the king had to approve laws and the charters for America. But they're saying their stated goal here at the very beginning is to the advancement and the enlargement of Christian religion to the glory of God Almighty, which was just crazy to me. Is people will say like, oh, our nation's a secular nation. How can you look at something like this and then just attribute this to, well, this is just some kind of a secular nation that some people happen to be Christian? I mean, this looks like overt Christianity in the government early formation. I'm kind of curious, especially you're in university, Jeb. Do you have to take like any history classes right now or anything like that?
I have to take a geography class next semester. I'm in aviation, so I don't have to do most of the, basics that most people have to take.
What about you're pretty fresh out of high school. Did they talk about the colonies or early American
they do.
history?
They talk. We had American. I was an AP American history, and they talk about American history pretty good in high school.
What about did they talk about America's founding and like from your perspective, what did you learn or what do you know about just any Christian heritage that we've had?
Well, yeah, I definitely think America was formed. It was a nation made for white Christians. I mean, and we've seen demographic change. I think, to me, demographic change is one of the biggest issues in our country, and a lot of people, look past that and don't think that religion, demographics are a big issue in our country. But a lot of issues in our country trickle down from that demographic change, I feel like.
I went to the University of Texas and I interviewed some students down there, and one of the students was telling me that our nation was like a secular nation. And I was kind of arguing with him about that. And I just thought it was kind of crazy. Yeah. He was a Hindu from India. And, I just didn't know if it's like coming from his heritage that he's confused on this, if it's because of the University of Texas. Like, what do you think about education, Pastor Oz? Like, when you were in school, do you feel like you were taught anything about Christian heritage when it came to American history?
No.
So I graduated.
Sorry.
Oh, did you say me or Jim?
Yeah, Pastor Oz. Let's let him answer real quick.
Yeah, so I graduated in 2015, and I took as many AP Government, AP History classes as I could because this is something I've always just been very interested in. And as far as my education goes, they definitely did not ignore or deny the fact that pre-1776, it was Christians coming here, fleeing persecution, religious liberty, but what they did do is they constantly painted it in the most negative light possible. I don't think hardly anyone would deny pre-1776 that the people here were just overtly Christian. They just make fun of it, like, oh, the Christians came here and just abused the Indians and tricked the Indians, and oh, manifest destiny, colonizing and taking over the land. So as far as my education goes, no, it was not ignored. It was acknowledged, but it was just scorned.
I mean, considering you're the camel jockey here, Ben, did you learn anything about Christian history, as far as America's concerned?
Yeah, in the United States, I mean, when I went to school partly here, partly in Lebanon, but the history classes I took in America definitely made it seem like the country was founded on secular principles, and that instead of fleeing Catholicism, which is what actually happened and what led to the founding of this country, in reality, what they taught is that in reality they were just fleeing Christianity in general, and that they wanted to establish a secular state because they saw the dangers of having a government established church. And so they wanted to just throw the baby out with the bathwater, basically, is their point that I learned that they taught me in school. And so that's why America's secular, so that we don't have a Church of England, so that we don't have Catholicism. When in reality, America was actually founded on evangelical Christianity as a response to the state-sanctioned Church of England. And it didn't just abandon religion as a whole because of Catholicism. But that's what they taught us in school.
I feel like I didn't learn anything about this, so maybe I just didn't pay attention. But, when I went to school, I feel like what I would learn about is Thanksgiving. There's these horrible white pilgrims, and they, hate Indians, and they're just attacking them and taking over their land for no reason. But the Indians are really nice, and they just want to, have Thanksgiving, so they brought them corn, and they tried to help them, and then they became friends, and then they had this, nice Thanksgiving meal or something. But what was interesting is I was reading the Charter for Pennsylvania, 1681. Now, I understand this is a little bit further down the timeline. This is about 80 years past Jamestown specifically. But in this, it actually does mention the natives. And it says specifically here, out of a commendable desire to enlarge our English empire and promote such useful commodities as may be of benefit to us and our dominions, as also to reduce the savage natives by gentle and just mamlers to the love of civil society and Christian religion. So, in this particular charter, it wants to actually convert Native Americans to Christianity. That was what their goal was, a gentle conversion, not just to kill them, not like the Holy Crusades, not just decimating their land or anything like that, but actually here in the law specifically, it's saying, hey, we want to use with love, bring them into civility, colonization, as it were. And then, of course, not only colonizing them, teaching them English, teaching them, how to have clean drinking water and just basic, just human things. then they also want to give them the Christian religion. They want them to be saved. They want them to, not go to hell with their pagan idolatry and their false religion. And so to me, this doesn't really paint a picture of just these horrific white people just trying to steal the, quote, Native American lands and just kill them and hate on them. Like, this is showing evidence of the fact that they actually care about these people and want them to be saved. Now, in our Constitution, and I don't know if I'm going to pull this up or not. Maybe I can. In our Constitution, it specifically addresses some of the things that the Native Americans were doing. And I'm sorry, the Declaration of Independence. I'm misspeaking when I said this. Let me grab this link. Because in our Declaration of Independence, it gives a list of grievances towards specifically the king. And in one of the situations, it's like addressing Native Americans. This might be too small. Let me make this bigger so y'all can kind of see it up here on the screen. So it gives a list of like grievances of why we even were fighting with the British in 1774, July 4th. July 4th, 1776 is when we declare independence. But in this particular document, it says that the king had refused to assent to laws. And this is the sense that the colonies couldn't pass their own laws and they weren't able to really govern themselves. And specifically, it brings up things that were going on with the Native Americans. I want to see if I can find this particular section in here about this. Do you know what I'm talking about, Pastor Oz?
About the savage tribes mentioned in the Declaration?
Yeah, so here it is. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us and has endeavored to bring out the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. So you have to understand something. If you watch The Patriot, which is my favorite movie, I don't know, I just love
I need to see this film.
You have to watch.
Hey, that's a movie reference I finally get. That's a great movie.
You have to watch The Patriot. But
Wow.
But here's the thing. In The Patriot, you get to see kind of what warfare looks like back then a little bit. Obviously, it's a movie, but, troops would just march up and then they would just stand in front of each other and take volleys at each other. And it was like a gentleman's way to have war, and then they would fight. And then even injured soldiers, often you would not kill them. But in the movie, the British, there's a specific general or there's a specific guy that's killing even the injured. And it's considered like a savage tactic. And it's just kind of like a brutal tactic. And he kills children at some point in the film. And it's considered like a really brutal, savage tactic or whatever. And it's really unpopular. And it just kind of shows how, people thought it was wrong to kill women and children. There's a horrible scene. I'm not going to tell you everything. There's another spoiler where a lot of women, children, and stuff are killed. Just innocent people, Christian people. And it's basically saying like that's what the Indians are like, the Native Americans, that they were going in, just killing women, killing children, killing the sick, killing the elderly. And, specifically the Americans, they want to defend themselves. The colonists want to defend themselves from these particular things. They're trying to pass laws. They're trying to essentially protect themselves. And the king won't do it. The king is just not allowing them to pass laws and not allowing them to basically, draft armies and figure out ways to defend themselves against these things. So they're just basically defenseless to all these savage Indians that are killing them. So, again, they're wanting to essentially become self-governed so that they can create militias, create, wartime efforts to defend themselves from these merciless Indian savages. Which, again, this is also pointing to the fact that it wasn't these horrible, awful, evil white people trying to kill Indians. It's like the Native Americans are these savages that are going around doing these crazy type of tactics, trying to attack, the colonists, trying to attack the early settlers and things like that. So my point is that this idea of Thanksgiving, of where these mean, awful white people are just stealing the Native American land, and the Native Americans are just these gentle, kind, with loving nature type people, it's just a fairy tale. It's a fairy tale. It's not real. I'm sure that there was good Native Americans that worked with the colonists, and I'm sure at sometimes they may have helped them with meals and vice versa and things like that. But generally speaking, it was a very pagan, God-hating, false religion, a bunch of barbarous people that were just attacking, the colonists who are trying to actually love them and give them the gospel. And they mostly just defended themselves. And most of the Indian savages died through like disease. They didn't even necessarily die through warfare. So, a lot of people have just misunderstandings about this. But I just want to bring that up. Are you aware of that, Pastor Oz? In our Declaration of Independence, it was addressing this particular
absolutely.
issue.
And it's still relevant today, especially where I live here in Oklahoma, where we have a good amount of Native Americans. And the ones that are really into being Native and they're just so proud of their Native heritage and they want to stick with their, Native culture, they're also some of the most unreceptive people when they're that way. Yes, there are Natives that are receptive, but like when they're really into their culture, they just really hate white people. They really hate Christians. When the irony in that is that they should be thankful for Christians this Thanksgiving because they wouldn't exist but for the benevolence of a more superior fighting force that allowed them to live. Not only do we allow them to live, here we are 250 years later, and they still have special treaties and tribe lands and their own police force, their own
They have their own
laws.
reservations. Are you going to tell me the Muslims would have given them their own reservations?
Right. So it was Christian people that led them to their very existence today in 2025, not to mention the great existence that they have in the greatest country on earth. But I don't respect Native American culture whatsoever. I think it needs to be scorned and spurned by Christians because it's complete pagan idolatry. They do this ghost dance here in Oklahoma, and part of their ghost dance is to try to ward off the white colonists trying to take their land. It's so unbelievable that that crap exists today when, like I said, it's by Christian benevolence that they even exist at all.
I'm kind of curious, Jeb, is this something that, when it comes to Thanksgiving, what have you heard about Thanksgiving and what do you know about Thanksgiving?
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of just heard that it was nice and the natives, wanted peace and they're just these nice people, we killed all their buffalo and they're just making campfires and setting up teepees, and it's all the evil white Christian men that came in there and just killed them all, even though the native tribes were fighting amongst each other for thousands of years, and I think that we civilized them.
This person in the chat says white people are the most benevolent colonizers. No other people would be that kind, Pastor Oz.
I was just going to say, it's not like we're saying that there was never any injustice done to the natives by anyone. I'm sure that there was. We're not defending that. But we're just saying, like, what that commenter said is true, except I would just say that Christians are the most benevolent colonizers, and that when you look at places that were colonized by Christians, they were treated very well, especially in comparison to other areas.
Yeah, and again, I'm sure a lot of us have Native American heritage.
Will always...
Go ahead.
Sorry. Natives, they always are like, oh, well, it's our country. You guys are the conquerors, because, as white Christians, we're always like, our country's being taken over. Natives didn't build anything. I mean, it was all the WASP ethnic group, which, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, who actually built this country and made it prosperous the same way they did in Australia. I mean, the Aboriginals didn't build anything. I mean, it was the WASP people that built everything, the whole Anglosphere.
Well, and again, like, what have they built since other than their casinos, which I don't even know that they actually built them. But many of them, even visit these reservations, they're living on government housing.
Jose built the casinos, let's just be honest.
What does that mean?
Well, honestly, I don't think the whole idea of reservation is bad, because, I mean, honestly, I'd rather them on a reservation amongst their own people than, them in our own communities.
Well, I'll tell you why it's bad.
What do you guys think?
I'll tell you why it's harmful to those people is because, like, the government has just put these Native Americans on reservations, and oftentimes here in Oklahoma, kids get money deposited into these accounts that they have access to once they're 18. Once they're 18, they have all this money, and then they just go ruin their lives at the casinos. Native Americans have some of the highest per capita drug use, violent crime, alcohol abuse. And so, like, I don't think that giving them all these special favors or putting them off on the reservation is helping them. I think it's actually hurting them. I always joke around like, hey, if I run for governor of Oklahoma someday, I'm just going to abolish all Native American treaties and tribes and handouts, and you could just be an Oklahoman.
Well, in reality, all of you on this broadcast right now need to be admitting that you are personally responsible for the atrocities that have occurred against these people. I want you to feel guilt perpetually. And also, all three of you need to be giving a land acknowledgement before we continue on with this broadcast, as we've seen the left do. I mean, come on.
There's another
going on
acknowledgement. I think it's a music acknowledgement that we need to be giving.
This is a music acknowledgement. Look at this.
That
This
is
mental
real
illness.
tribal music.
This is mental illness.
I didn't know they invented
This is the
80s
music that they gave us.
But this is what we're supposed to exalt right here. This is what we're supposed to do a land acknowledgement for at events and things like that. The left
shut
bows
up,
down to
racist.
this.
Shut up, racist. Just do the ghost dance and worship Satan and shut up, all right?
Well, see, here's the thing. Without reservations, would we be able to enjoy this video right now? So
It's just like in New Zealand when they do that chant in their parliament, if you guys know what I'm talking about.
I have no idea what is it.
I saw
Okay.
that. Yeah, that was wild. Oh,
They have like what are the Aboriginals or something doing some kind of a weird chant, or what is it?
I mean, it's a different ethnic group. It isn't the Aboriginals, but it's whatever the native New Zealanders are. And they went in their parliament like a year ago, and they did it again like recently a month ago. Some little chant or something.
I mean, at some point, like, the reservation idea probably made sense at some point. Like, just kind of saying, like, hey, just have this section of land and just kind of, like, stay out of our area. But, like, at some point, does it make sense that the reservation just permanently exists? Like, it's like, how many generations removed are we now from the original tribes or Cherokees or whatever? And again, like, I have no problem with them intermingling. I mean, I'm sure I'm part Cherokee. I think I'm like I don't know. It's like my great grandma or something was supposedly a Cherokee or something like this. I think everybody's grandma's a great Cherokee princess or something like this. There's been so much mixing and stuff like that over time. But, again, I have no problem with people adapting. But at the end of the day, like, he should, giving them their own space to just basically rot their brains away on drugs and peyote and marijuana and just drinking themselves into oblivion and just getting money from these casinos just seems like a worthless existence. It seems stupid to perpetuate that. Why are we spending tax dollars on just funding just like a drug addicted lifestyle? Like, to me, we should basically just say, like, hey, it's over. Sorry, the fun ride's over. You guys got to figure out your own thing. You got to just basically become a productive member of society or, perish. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, like, I think it's stupid to just give them free money. Thanksgiving, your Thanksgiving myth's over. Thanks for the corn or whatever. What is it? What is his name?
Sacagawea.
No, I don't know. What is it?
Sacagawea is a woman.
No, what's the dude?
I know.
Why can't I remember his name? We need help from the chat. What's the guy's name?
Jason West. Kidding. Jason, I love you.
He's sending smoke signals right now. He's so mad.
Yep.
No, there was like the two. Isn't there the story? There's like the one famous Indian that supposedly gave them corn or something like this. Someone can help me out with this. Where's our chat at? Our chat has no
Polly
idea.
Cooper.
What? I've never heard this. Am I gonna have to look it up myself? I'm gonna have to look it up.
I just searched what you said on Google. Famous Indian gave them corn. And it said the famous Native American who gave corn to others is Polly Cooper.
I feel like it was somebody else's name, and I feel like it escapes me.
Okay, we have some other guesses from the chat room here. Tutankhamun,
I've never heard of that one either.
Geronimo. We have Trump,
What's around?
Squanto.
Squanto. That's who I was thinking of. Yeah, there we go. Squanto. Isn't it the Squanto? He's the one that. Our audience has got some wild guesses in there, but thanks for trying. Now we can come back, and I just want to go to a little bit more colonial history, and then we can talk about 1776. I kind of gave away a little bit of that, but we have to do a little bit of the laws of Connecticut of 1673. I'm gonna
put that meme up, Tim.
Yeah, I know.
Tutankhamun is King Tut from Egypt. FYI.
So the laws of Connecticut of 1673 Is it something that I actually have a physical copy of? And it's a reprint.
I think your second favorite book behind the Bible.
Maybe. Might as well be. Well, at least it has a lot of Bible in it. But we actually referenced this in the Sodomite Deception.
That's right.
I'm going to be looking for this page. Let's play a clip from this. We actually have a clip from the Sodomite Deception, and it talks specifically about this document in the Sodomite Deception clip. So go ahead and play it whenever
The laws of the colony of Virginia, enacted in 1612, says in Section 9, "No man shall commit the horrible and detestable sins of sodomy upon pain of death. Anyone guilty of one of the capital offenses on this list were liable to death," drawn up by the Plymouth County in 1636. These included treason, murder, witchcraft, arson, sodomy, rape, buggery, and adultery. The Massachusetts Bay Colony identified sodomy as one of 12 capital crimes in 1641. Section 8 of its law stated, "If any man lieth with mankind as he lieth with a woman, both of them have committed abomination. They both shall surely be put to death." The Blue Laws of Connecticut, enacted in 1647, states the following in Section 7, "If any man lieth with mankind as he lieth with woman, both of them have committed abomination. They both shall surely be put to death." The New Haven Law of 1655 stated, "If any man lie with mankind as he lieth with a woman, both of them have committed abomination. They both shall surely be put to death." The law continues, "And if any woman change the natural use into that which is against nature, as Romans 1:26, she shall be liable to the same sentence and punishment." The preamble to the Connecticut Laws of 1672 stated the following: "The serious consideration of the necessity of the establishment of wholesome laws for the regulating of each body politic hath inclined us mainly in obedience unto Jehovah the great lawgiver, who hath been pleased to set down a divine platform not only of the moral, but also of judicial laws, suitable for the people of Israel." According to homosexuals and the death penalty in colonial America, in 1776, male homosexuals in the original 13 colonies were universally subject to the death penalty.
I refer to homosexual marriage as sodomy-based marriage. This is a marriage, pseudo-marriage. It's counterfeit marriage, fake marriage, not the real thing. It's Naugahyde marriage. And it is rooted in the act of sodomy, which was a felony offense everywhere in the United States of America. Everywhere in the United States, it was a felony offense, capital offense a lot of places, until 1962. Then Illinois, I believe, got rid of their sodomy statute. It was still a felony offense in the other 49 states until 1972. And then finally, the sexual revolution began to crumble, erode the pillars of American morality. And now you talk about preserving public policies against this behavior. You get tagged as a homophobic bigot for advocating the moral position that all of America took for virtually all of our history.
Brian Fish. Oh, there we go. Someone said this is how I met my wife. Apparently, I was talking about the laws of Connecticut 1673. Hey, if she's actually interested in the laws of 1673, she's a winner. That's all I have to say.
Right.
That was the pickup line. You have a moment to talk about the 1673 laws of Connecticut?
Go back to my screen. Here's the thing. We got to get Brian Fisher on the show if we can. I don't know. That guy seems pretty based. But it's hard for me. Okay, it's not necessarily the easiest to read this, but it was referenced in there when it's talking about getting the laws from the great lawgiver Jehovah. Yeah. And there's capital laws, and this was referenced in your Benelog. But the first one here, it says, "If any man or woman after legal conviction shall have or worship any other god but the Lord God, he shall be put to death," and then specifically cites all of the biblical references. Additionally talks about blasphemy, witchcraft, murder, bestiality, sodomy, like was referenced in the Sodomite Deception. Great film. You should watch it, sodomitedeception.com. Also incest, rape, conspiracy to commit murder, even has children cursing or striking their parents or being a stubborn and rebellious son, which honestly, this is pretty much just the list from the Bible. It's basically about the 13 to 17, exactly how you categorize it doesn't matter, but the few dozen or less than dozen capital law punishments that were found in the scripture pretty much just slapped and pasted here in the laws of Connecticut of 1673. And again, these laws carried forward even up to 1776, even beyond the ratification of the Constitution. And it wasn't until like even Brian Fisher mentions, it was a felony even, in some of these cases for sodomy specifically, all the way up into the 60s. In the state of Texas, it was illegal to be a homosexual until 2003. It was the Texas versus Lawrence Supreme Court case that actually overturned the law in America, and specifically in Texas. With Texas went like, I think, somewhere between 11 to 13 other states. And for the first time, it was just basically legal to be homosexual in America in all 50 states. Then fast forward 2015, you have same-sex marriage being approved. I don't know. I guess, has there been other legislation since 2015 that was noteworthy? I think they became like judges and some other things.
Something about you can't discriminate against them.
2008, is that Barack Obama saying change has come to America? Change has come to America. So that famous speech that he has in there.
Hey, just a few weeks ago, the Supreme Court announced that they're going to reject reconsidering Obergefell v. Hodges.
Yeah.
That's kind of
I thought that already came out, but yeah, that's kind of a sad reality. I think
they're not
there was a
gonna overturn
woman, isn't there?
not even going to consider it.
Wasn't there a clerk somewhere in like Kentucky or something like Tennessee, something like this, that refused to provide the marriage certificate? She got sued, and then finally it's gotten to the Supreme Court. Think about that. 2015, it's 2025, and it's now at the Supreme Court, and they finally rejected it. I think she has to pay some big fine, like $100,000 or something, for this. But again, to our audience or people that haven't seen this before, I recommend listening, watching to the Sodomite Deception. You can go watch it for free, sodomitedeception.com. But this show's not specifically about that issue, but it is an issue that is kind of a lightning rod issue in our culture today.
We're showing how the country at one point appealed to Scripture in its opposition of sodomy. That's the idea.
And everything. I mean, murder,
and a lot of other stuff too,
all
right?
kinds of
Not
stuff.
just that one issue, but
How
we
could
see
you be a
Bible
Hindu?
references over
How
and
could
over
you be Hindu
again.
with those laws?
You can't. I mean, again, it's over and over again. They're appealing to Jehovah God, to Christianity, to the Bible, to the Word of God. It is just repeated over and over. Now, there is that slow degradation as we get into, the 1800s and 1900s, but still, it was still there. And, so it is just absolutely absurd and ahistorical to claim that we have always been secular, that the country was founded on secular principles. And in a departure from Christianity.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious, Jeb. Are you even old? Are you under or over the age of 21?
I'm 19.
Wow. So like he grew up. He was born into America where homosexuality was legal. Like in high school, it was illegal, and then now he's born into a country where he knows no different. Like it's kind of culturally accepted. It's praised in many cases. I'm just kind of curious, do you feel like your generation, though, the Zoomer generation, is kind of resisting what, some of this cultural stuff that's being, changed recently?
Yeah, I think most of Gen Z, and especially Gen Z men, are against this mass degeneracy and leftism that we see in modern day society. And for something like gay marriage, for example, to me personally, it isn't the end of the world. I think that we should scale up and look at the issues on why, people talk about gay marriage, why gays want to get married. I mean, people weren't advocating for gay marriage in the 1950s. So I always try to scale up on my
Well, it was because they were being raided and thrown in prison. They weren't going to ask for marriage when they're being arrested. I think people don't even realize how much our country's changed. Like, I don't feel like Zoomers or young people realize maybe where we've come from and how much the laws
someone like
changed.
myself, I'm originally from North Dakota, so I'm originally from a pretty white, culturally Christian, homogenous society, and I come down to Texas, and it's just multiculturalism. I mean, yeah, people are Republican more, but it's multiculturalism, and I would say kind of low IQ conservatism, to be honest with you.
Texas is definitely very diverse. I think it kind of depends on where you're at. I'm in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and Dallas seems to be
diverse.
a little bit more liberal. Like Fort Worth's kind of more conservative. Dallas is probably pretty liberal. Austin's very liberal in comparison to other Texas areas. I feel like rural Texas is a very conservative, demographic typically. But, at the end of the day, I think that most people are just kind of out of touch with just where we've come from, what our laws are like. I like to, talk to people that, like you, that in my mind have a kind of a fresh perspective. They haven't necessarily been exposed to some of the information that, we're sharing right now or some of the documentaries we put out. But I feel like a lot of people are just being lied to. They have a confusing idea of what America used to be like. A lot of these laws and things would be kind of crazy for them to hear.
I think a lot of the low IQ conservatives wouldn't like to hear this as well because of how watered down they are. And I appreciated that term from Jeb. Do you mind expanding on that just a little bit to tell us what you would consider a low IQ conservative?
I'd love to. That would be like your conservative that's like, yeah, let's go, Trump, make America great again, lower gas prices, worried so much about, say, like black people or Islam, which they are an issues in our America, but I think that we have to scale up on that issue. Listening to Trump 100%, Jews are God's chosen people, stuff like that kind of. And I think really like beating down like gay marriage or abortion, which I personally disagree with both topics, but I don't think those are the biggest issues in our country today.
So the Sodomite Deception was released in 2021. I'm trying to remember timelines here, and forgive me. Were you at Steadfast Baptist Church, Pastor Oz, when we released that film? Had you already been working with us?
Yep, I moved there in August of 2020.
Okay, so but I am kind of curious. Prior to exposure to that film in any way, like did you kind of have any idea about what that film's like showcased in its history section? Did you already have awareness of this, or did you feel like it was really novel, like it was new information?
I learned a lot in that documentary because even though American history has been something I've always loved, the kind of more niche topic of sodomy laws specifically in American history was definitely not taught in public school, and I had not come across that information. So that was really great information for sure. I know that there was I want to say 7-ish states that it was still illegal to be a sodomite up until that 2003 ruling. So, I mean, I was alive during that time, and
I thought it was like 11. Maybe I'm wrong. You could be right.
11,
it was definitely.
You're right.
It was somewhere between a handful to a dozen, but it's definitely something though that I think some people will still give lip service to. They'll say like, oh, okay, well that was how it was, but then once 1776 hit, we're just secular. We're just a secular nation. We're agnostic. We totally repented of our Puritan ways or our Christian ways, and now we're just this secular state. But I want to bring up in the Declaration of Independence, July 4th, 1776, we have the 13 colonies uniting against the British Empire specifically, but it does mention God in the Declaration of Independence. I'm going to read a couple sections here, but it says, the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of natures God entitled them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. So it's saying here, and maybe I should just read the whole sentence, but at the very beginning it's saying, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of natures God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind. So here's kind of if you just read the Declaration of Independence, and I want to get you guys' thoughts on this, but when I read the Declaration of Independence, it becomes very clear that they're expressing their hesitation to separate from Britain. They're not saying that they wanted to. They're not saying that they're doing this on a hair trigger. They're not saying that they like what they're having to do. They're saying we've given repeated requests to the king to give us laws and to give us an opportunity to govern ourselves and to basically just exist as a people. But through heavy oppression, through the savagery of Native Americans killing us, through your own militias and not necessarily militias, but just their own military forces being present and doing whatever they want, mock trials. It brings up in the Declaration of Independence specifically how somebody could just be drug off to another state and just be prosecuted for a fake crime. Or they might have a hearing in England and give you short notice. Well, you have no chance to cross the Atlantic and come to this, quote, hearing. So they basically have no representation, and that's the famous quote, right? Taxation with no representation. It's like, hey, the king will just say, oh, you have a hearing on Monday. It's in England. Tough titty, said the kitty, since you're over there in New England. But it's like, essentially, they have no chance to govern themselves. They're being killed. They're being taken advantage of. The military is just raping and pillaging at their own will. There's no way to essentially hold the military accountable for their egregious actions. They're being taxed to high heaven. And he's basically just saying, hey, we should have a right to basically just have a life. I mean, and that's what we have, is the right to life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. It's just like, we shouldn't necessarily just have to be this slaved class of oppression and just watch our women and children die and allow all our money to be taken and just allow all of our establishment and colony to be destroyed, because we're the ones that built it. I mean, they came over here, they did the hard job, they built the settlements, they built the colonies, they're passing the laws, they're birthing the children. There's like, we should have the right to defend ourselves and basically have, a life. And I think it's just basically saying, hey, at some point there's a breaking point. You can sit here and tax me and oppress me.
We're seeing today.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm saying, like, if you get to a point where you can't even live your life, then, he's basically, and I think at the end of this, they basically appeal to the Supreme Judge I'm sorry, I'm going to give me a second here. They appeal to,
divine providence. It says
that's also mentioned, true, but it says, we therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies solemnly publish and declare. So here's the thing. What they're saying is, let God judge if we're right or wrong. Our intentions here are not to try and just to rebel. We're not a rebellious people. We're not just trying to take advantage of a situation where we're across the Atlantic and you're going to have a difficulty enforcing your rule. We've tried our best to work with you. You won't work with us. You're killing us. You're oppressing us. You're taxing us to death. And at this point, in order to just have a life, we're going to defend ourselves. And we're appealing to God to basically say, hey, we hope that whatever we're doing is right. Plus, like you mentioned here, it says down here at the bottom, and for the support of this declaration with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence. What is divine providence? Well, we see America ends up separating from Britain and becomes the superpower of the world. You'd almost ask, hey, God, who was right in the situation? It kind of seems like America was right by the circumstances of what happened. There's a fourth mention, because there's four mentions of God in the Declaration of Independence. I mentioned three. I'm forgetting exactly what the other one was. I could probably look it up. It's just the most famous one. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And again, the inalienable meaning that you can't take them away from us. I feel like I didn't learn this. And again, maybe I was just a bad student. But I just feel like in school, they weren't slowing down and reading us the Declaration of Independence. They weren't explaining to us the Constitution. They weren't explaining the context upon which these things were happening. Multiculturalism is being pushed. Right. Draw up a happy picture of an Indian with a turkey and a cowboy pilgrim, and and again, demonizing them, saying like, oh, these evil little pilgrims, they're killing witches, they're burning witches and whatever. And you're just thinking like, I'm supposed to be mad at them killing witches now or something like, isn't that what the Bible says?
Yeah.
Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. Isn't that the Bible?
To live, exactly. That is Bible. So.
What do you think about this, Middle Easterner over here, camel jockey? Like,
I'm just jumping on the bandwagon. I mean, that's why, my family immigrated here in like the 70s or something. But the thing about my family that I appreciate is they said, like, you're American. Like, don't identify with where you came from in the past anymore. My parents
You're
don't.
born in New Jersey, right?
Yeah, I'm born in New Jersey. My parents don't even want me to, like, know. If I try to call them up to talk to them about different things from Lebanon and stuff, I kind of have to pull them over the finish line in a sense and kind of make them talk about it because they don't even like talking about it. It's difficult for them. They want to just identify with the United States and just be totally assimilated here. But one thing I will say is that when you bring up, well, maybe I didn't pay attention in school, I think the reason you didn't learn this, it's not necessarily because you weren't paying attention. I think a lot of this information is concealed. I think a lot of this information is being hidden because, they don't want people to realize what this country was actually founded on. Because then it would make them question practically everything, the way that the mainstream view is presented today, which is that the founders and everybody that had to, anything to do with this country totally rejected Christianity. They were deists. They didn't, believe in a personal God. They didn't believe in the Bible. The Bible had nothing to do with our founding. So if you look at these documents for yourself, it totally destroys that narrative. And I think that's why they've concealed it for so many people.
I know that you, Pastor Oz, had more of an interest in politics, and especially in your upbringing. I was not really interested in politics. So, but, from your perspective, do you feel like you learned some of this information, or do you feel like you had to learn some on your own? Do you feel like you're still learning? Like, what's going on with these foundational documents from your perspective?
I'm thankful that I had some really good teachers in school. I was going through a law enforcement program through my public school and high school, and that teacher actually made us write by hand the entire Declaration and Constitution, and we spent years going through line by line. I was also a part of a kind of an extracurricular program when I was in high school called Patriot Academy. Jeb, have you ever heard of Patriot Academy?
No, sir, I've not.
Okay. I thought maybe with our age it might be the same, but basically it's like you go to the Idaho State Capitol, you go to the Texas State Capitol, and you work with legislators and learn how to go through the committee process, and you write bills and you argue on the House floor and on the Senate floor and like do all that stuff. So like I went through all that stuff, and I don't know.
Isn't that preparing young men to like get into politics?
Yeah, and unfortunately women too, but yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, it might be something for young people to look into. I think I've heard about that before. I don't know much about it. Do you recommend that organization in any way? Like, you feel like it at least teaches you some good things about our history?
I will say that I definitely recommend it from its historical value, from its civic value. I can't really endorse the religious views of the people running it because I think there's a lot of Pentecostal flavor in the leadership there. But yeah, I mean, if you've read your Bible and you know your Bible and you got your head screwed on straight and you're a young man that wants to make a difference in this area, in this sphere of the world, I would say it's a good thing to go to. Because I do want to say this, like, I think a lot of people now kind of have this attitude where, we as Christian, we shouldn't participate in society. Christians shouldn't be in politics. Christians shouldn't be cops. Christians shouldn't be judges. I don't know about you. If I get pulled over by a cop, I want it to be a man that believes in Jesus Christ. And if I stand before a judge, I want it to be a man who believes that the law of God is the law. And I feel like it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy when Christians whine and complain about how like bad leaders are. But then at the same time, like we're actively discouraging Christians from being in positions of authority. And like, not to say that politics is more important than the ministry, because if you read the state constitutions of the original 13 colonies, many of them had an outright ban on pastors being the governor or congressman or anything like that, not because they had a bad view on Christianity, but because they had such a high view of Christianity that they viewed a pastor's job as being more important than that of a legislator. But if you also read those same documents, you'll see that it was a requirement to be a Protestant Christian to be in a position of power. So I think I have a little bit of a balanced view on this. Like, obviously, we don't want to put our trust in princes. Obviously, we don't want politics to consume our lives or have it take precedence over our service for God and the ministry or anything like that. But I also just don't agree with like discouraging Christians from being in civil society.
Well, Jesus said, "Occupy till I come." And, of course, that's a parable. But I think that you could almost make the argument, hey, we should at least do the best that we can while we're here. Something that Jeb's been kind of hinting at and bringing up, and I want to kind of transition to is the Constitution itself. Now, this is 10 years, approximately 10 years, a little bit more than that, past the Declaration of Independence. We have the Constitution. One of the things in the Constitution, it says, no person shall be a representative who shall not have attained to the age of 25 years and been 7 years a citizen of the United States. Now, that kind of sticks out to me because, I feel like I could understand in the early colonial America that you have a lot of people coming and going, and you probably have a lot of Europeans resettling. And so they didn't want to just restrict their representatives to just natural-born citizens at that time, maybe just considering the influx of Europeans and everything like that. But now, this statute, I almost feel like should be addressed, because do we really want people coming from India sitting here for 7 years and then becoming elected into office? Like, I feel like this is not a good idea. What are your thoughts on this, Jeb?
Yeah, I think that all our representatives and all our senators and anyone that works in government should be born here to truly grasp American culture and what it stands for. I don't think we should have naturalized citizens in our government. I don't think that's crazy or irrational to say that.
Like, does it make sense to just allow people that were born in Israel to just come over here for 7 years and then be elected?
Yeah, no dual citizenship. No members if you've served in a foreign country's military. I mean, that's not a crazy statement. I understand back in 1776 because, a lot of immigration was coming from Europe, and that's how our country was founded, off the European immigrants. But yeah, I think now it should be, you have to be born in America to represent the citizens.
How do you feel about that, Ben? Would you be offended if we said, hey, only natural born citizens can
No, not at all.
elected representatives? I mean, how can you even argue against that at this point?
Yeah, that would not offend me whatsoever. I think those people have the most knowledge of what makes America tick. I think these are the people who've totally enveloped themselves in the culture, especially if they've been here for generations at a time. That's who I would want to be representing me. I think I would want there to be ideological continuity in terms of Christian morals, ethics, conservative values first and foremost. But I think what you'll notice often is that there is a tight coupling between that worldview and someone who has totally embraced Americana, as it were. But Jeb, I think you were going to chime in there if you wanted to add to that or say anything.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, our country literally was Christians from Europe, and it was like that until like 1960s. America was 90% white. Honestly, this is just my total, things would just get fixed. Two major things. If we got the Jews out of the government, stopped supporting Israel so much, and just really in total, and fixed our demographics. I mean, that would solve most problems in America, 100%.
I mean, I feel like when it comes to the demographic, issue, like what Ben said, because he used really like political language. It's like white people are Christian, non-white people are not. And I think that's really been our issue.
Are you saying I was PC there?
I think you used...
Go for it. Tell it like it really is.
Exactly,
I watered it down.
Right? I mean, you import a bunch of... obviously, black people were transported over here through the slave trade. And a lot of them are not Christian whatsoever. So you're bringing in some kind of a tribal paganism. Until 1960, like you said, demographically, America was basically white. I don't know the exact percentage of like Hispanic white. I think even in the 1960s,
Probably
it was
1
like
to 2%.
Yeah, I've heard maybe it could have been 3 to 5%. Let's just be generous and say it was even 5%. You still basically have like an 85% white nation that's pretty much just Christian whatsoever. You import people from Mexico, you're importing Catholicism. You import from India, you're importing Hinduism. You import from, other parts of the world. And again, you're bringing in not just a skin color, you're bringing in a false religion. And I feel like that's the Trojan horse, and I think that's why the multiculturalism is a crafty argument, because they try to hide behind someone being racist about skin color when there's this whole package being brought with them. You know, they're bringing in false religion, they're bringing in weird and strange ideas. And of course, someone that's imported into our country, even if it's only been 7 years, they don't have a vested interest in our future like someone that was born and raised here, that their entire family and cousins and everybody is here. Any nation that's going to be isolated for a period of time is going to eventually look the same. There's a reason why in the 1950s, it's like Japanese people look the same, Chinese people look the same, Australians look the same, Americans look the same, because this is how it works. America has just been this like weird melting pot experiment in the last 60 years, and it's really changed, you know, a lot. Our country has radically changed demographically, religiously, all kinds of different things. So, you know, I don't really care about skin color personally, but at the same time, it's hard to ignore the tight coupling that comes with skin color and religion. When you
that's why the left hates white people. It's not because of our skin. It's because that it's associated with
they hate Christianity.
Right. That like they don't really hate white people. That's what we have to understand.
Well, they are
They
white.
really hate is Christians.
The left is
I
white.
wouldn't consider them white.
Oh.
Yeah, but what about the left? I mean, can't you say like the left? I mean, Bill Clinton's pretty white. Hillary Clinton looks
Elizabeth
pretty
Warren
white.
claims to be Native.
I mean,
but
yeah,
she looks pretty
Elizabeth
white
Warren.
to
Sorry,
me.
she's a Native American.
I mean, would you consider Jews white?
I think that they're definitely, you know, if you didn't know it was a Jew, you would think it's white. Obviously, the Jews are some kind of a mix, a European mix, and most of their demographic issues for me is the fact that they've been incestuously intermarrying for so long that they have like screwed up noses and all kinds of weird things going on. But like, yeah, I think that they're white personally. And again, you go to the Middle East, obviously there's going to be a little bit like more brown, you know, mixed in. I think, Ben, are the Jews in the Middle East a little bit more brown than the ones than Jerry Seinfeld?
I mean, yeah, it just depends on the geography, obviously. But
Harvey Weinstein looks pretty white.
you know, there's some pretty white looking ones too.
I mean, Hollywood looks pretty white.
Yeah.
You know, when we talk about some of those Jews, and I understand they're like secular Jews and stuff like that, but they've been mixing with Europeans for centuries at this point. So
I mean,
how would they not be
portray
white?
themselves as white. They try to portray themselves as white, but their whole agenda is anti-white and anti-Christian.
Yeah, I think that they kind of are I personally think they're just being hypocrites about the whole issue. It's like we hate white people, but then they're also white because I feel like the Democrats.
But like they're not really
doing the
white.
same
They're not
thing.
European. They're not European. They aren't. I mean, they aren't like, you know, someone from England or someone such as you or myself.
What do you
And they
think?
look down
What do you?
upon
How would you classify them? I'm just kind of curious.
I would say that they're their own thing. I mean, Jews.
Yeah, but like, what about Ivanka
weird.
Trump? Didn't she convert? Is she now magically an ethnic Jew?
No, I mean that's not how it works. She's Croatian. I think you're thinking about Trump's daughter, married to Jared Kushner, converted to
Right.
Judaism.
Yeah, but again, I think
But she's-
historically that's going to be that's been happening for centuries. That you're having people convert to Judaism, intermarry, adultery, bastard children. Of course, you still have a lot of incestuous relationships like the Rothschilds and other people like that. But I feel like they left brown and they came out pretty white. I think like there was
Yeah,
a
they
lot of
seem white to me.
watering down.
Most Jews I've ever met were white.
And again, I'm not saying
I mean, they're
that
white,
all of
but they aren't the same white as like Europeans.
I mean, it's not like Drake is white, but isn't
Hey,
he?
Pastor Shelley, do you
isn't he
mind
a
if I
Jew?
change the subject and talk
Yeah, go
about
for
the wonderful First Amendment here? So I want to talk about the First Amendment because this is something that's often used as an attack on the fact that we were a Christian nation. And people say, no, of course, America was founded secular because haven't you read the First Amendment? Haven't you learned about separation of church and state? I just want to read the First Amendment for the audience. And do we have this on the screen by chance? Maybe I could even get it up before I read it.
No, can we put it on the screen?
If we don't have it, that's okay. I'll just read it.
I'll pull it up. Just go ahead and start reading it, and I'll
Okay, so the First Amendment, I'll just read it in whole. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Now, the claim that's made out there is that one of the claims that are made about the First Amendment is the First Amendment is what gives us our right to freely practice our religion. And to that, I say that is 100% incorrect. The First Amendment does not give us any rights whatsoever, because like you were reading in the Declaration of Independence, the founders believed in something called natural rights, rights given by God that are inalienable. And I believe natural rights is a biblical concept. You know, the Bible says, "Thou shalt not kill." What does that imply? That implies that I have a right to live. I have a natural right to live. Thou shalt not steal. I have a natural right to my property, and it would be an infringement upon my natural right for someone to steal from me. So what this amendment is, this amendment does not grant any rights. What it actually does is it restricts rights. Specifically, it restricts the right of the federal Congress. That's why the first word is Congress. What this amendment is telling us is that Congress is not allowed to make a law respecting an establishment of religion. That's known as the Establishment Clause in the First Amendment. And the reason that exists is because these people are coming from England, where they had a church-sponsored religion. A state-sponsored religion. The Church of England. So the Americans said, hey, we are not going to have the Church of the United States of America. We're not going to have the Church of Oklahoma, the Church of North Carolina. They recognize that this institution of government, yes, it's a God-instituted organization, but it is a separate institution from that of church. So they're not allowed to make a law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So there is no like positive declaration towards religion in this specific amendment. This is a restrictive amendment telling the Congress they can't do those two things. So they can't prohibit the free exercise thereof. Now, what's interesting, and what I personally find the most interesting, I think the colonial stuff is super cool, but just personally, I think this is more interesting. The fact that how do we know what the average American, how do we know what the people who were the contemporaries of the founding father thought of whether or not our country was a Christian country? Well, you could read the state constitutions, which were written by the contemporaries of the men who drafted this Constitution and who drafted this First Amendment. Our country was built on a system called federalism, which, don't let that word trick you. All it just means is a separation of power between the federal government and the state governments. The federal Constitution was purposely broad and restrictive towards what Congress could do because of the fact that a lot more specificity was going to be given in the state constitutions.
So this doesn't restrict the states at all. Like, and again, I'm just kind of
at all.
Readdressing this because you have colonial laws, and I think it's important to just say, like, look, here's where the colonies were at. They break away. They're now creating their own government from a federal perspective. And it makes sense that this loose federal government, because again, they wanted a limited federal government with strong states. And again, the states had no restriction on having what we would call, overt Christian laws, in the sense that they did say, hey, you have to profess faith in Jesus Christ to be in any position of government. That is what some of them explicitly stated.
Most of the 13,
and even in Georgia specifically, I think I can find it in here. Yeah. So in Georgia specifically, they said, I had it on the screen, it went away. So it literally, this is a state of Georgia charter, and this goes way into the 1800s. So this is well past the Constitution that we're talking about here, where Congress was limited, but not Georgia. And it says, there shall be a liberty of conscience allowed in the worship of God to all persons inhabiting, or which shall inhabit or be resident within our said provinces, and that all such persons, except papists, shall have a free exercise of their religion. Now, I just find that fascinating because, people don't really understand this, but in the state of Georgia, you could not be Catholic. All the way into the late 1800s, it was expressly forbidden. What people don't understand is the 14th Amendment is what actually took the constitutional language and applied it to the states, to where then the states could no longer have things like this. There's an article I read, and it was saying like almost all of the colonies or the states in 1777, 1780, 1784 had religious tests and religious oaths that you had to take in order to be a representative for those states. So, when they talk about, the First Amendment allows me to be a Hindu or an atheist or whatever, it's like, nah, that's not what it was. Dude, you're totally wrong on that. I'll just read one. Delaware, 1776. It says, every person who shall be chosen as a member of either house or appointed to any office or place of trust before taking a seat or entering upon the execution of his office shall take the following oath or affirmation. If conscientiously scrupulous of taking an oath, to wit, I do profess faith in God the Father, and in Jesus Christ his only Son, and in the Holy Ghost, one God, blessed forevermore, and I do acknowledge the Holy Scriptures of the Old and New Testament to be given by divine inspiration. So
Real secular.
You had to take that oath in order to be in the government of Delaware. This is 1776 specifically. And so, what they didn't want, though, because Baltimore, and let's be honest, Baltimore, Maryland did have a lot of Catholics, and it was a Catholic haven for them to have their worship. What they didn't want is they didn't want the Catholics to infiltrate the federal government and then just restart the Dark Ages from essentially what happened in Europe. They didn't want to have the Catholic state-run church again. They didn't want to have the Anglican church state again, the Church of England overbearing on top of them again. They wanted to have their own freedom to worship God as they see fit and to protect what they would call the Protestant faith, the Protestant religion. And so, it's crazy that you can have so much evidence for what the context was for these documents. But because we removed a couple hundred years, because of degeneracy in our culture, because of lies and propaganda, people now hear and they think, oh, our country was a secular nation. It was, that's what's made it so great, is the secularizing of a nation and a culture. And that's what America was founded on. But like you said, the restriction was on the federal government. I agree with that still. I think that the federal government, we should have a limited federal government.
It's great, yeah.
And the federal government should not be telling us, hey, you have to be Catholic or Baptist or Episcopalian or whatever.
But I don't think any government should be. Absolutely.
Right. Well, personally, I don't have a problem if the states were still enforcing rules.
Well, the states were making rules about the
but
type of people that could be in positions of power. But the vast majority of the states are not saying like, we're going to round up Muslims and kill them, or convert them at the end of a sword or something like that. This was rules for their government.
Right, but if you had the colonial laws, if you had any other god, you would be killed. So
sure, I'm
just to make it clear,
1776.
you couldn't just worship water goo goo in the early colonial America whatsoever. And so I think that we should still have a limited federal government. It made sense that if you're going to join together with states to fend off the British Empire, hey, we got to have a military, we got to have some federal considerations. I think the federal government should exist. And, I think that our system is actually pretty good. I think the problem with our system for the most part is the people that are in charge of it. I don't think the system itself is bad.
The pre-colonial system, personally. Because, if we were to implement that right now... Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeb.
Well, because when, they founded our country, they said that only white landowning men should vote. Obviously, I think people should vote still, but I think that, only one household per a vote or something like that. How do you feel about that issue?
Absolutely agree.
There's a lot of uneducated voters out there and just stupid people that are voting, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you had to be able to read and write. You had to be landowning. And I've advocated on our show before. I think that should still be the rule. I think in America, in order to vote, you should be a land-owning, natural-born citizen that is male. And I think it should be over the age of 18. And you should have to be able to read and write to be able to vote. There should probably be some kind of test in general. And again, it doesn't have to be super difficult. I know that some people get scared with that because they think like, oh man, you're gonna get people out. But for the most part, I do think there should be a high barrier to entry to vote because they're the ones that have a vested interest in the country. Yeah. Why, someone that just lives in an apartment.
100% agree.
Someone that lives in an apartment that's been here for 1 year, they can literally vote in Texas. This is insane.
And also the whole idea of like, well, democracy is the majority of the opinion. Well, if the majority of people are just thinking complete backwards thinking, that doesn't, add to society. The idea of a state and a nation state should be guide the people that live there and people that want to provide for the country, not just a consensus of a stupid idea, which I think we have a lot today.
I always, like, in a world where I just get to do whatever I want, I thought, if you get to vote, you should almost have to take a test that's based on like policy decisions. And if your policy decisions don't even line up with your candidate, your vote is like basically in void. Because it's like, I wonder how many people like don't even understand how in contrast their actual policy views are to the candidates that are actually running. And it would almost be interesting too if candidates, whenever they had policy, like there was some kind of a rule where if whatever their campaign promises are, if they go outside of those boundaries, then they null and void their opportunity to continue to stay in their elected office. Like basically they're taken out of office for having violated. They get impeached for having violated their campaign promises. Because right now you can literally promise anything. Trump's promised the moon, guys. I mean, he's promised literally everything. And what has he delivered on? And to me, like, it's not fair to the American people that you can have someone campaign for years telling you all these things that they're going to do. You vote for that person based on those premises, and then they totally change. They totally do something different. I mean, how is it fair to vote Barack Obama into office saying that he believes marriage is between one man and one woman, and then he totally switches on that issue? He should have to step down and not be allowed to continue being the president of the United States if he's going to switch on things like that. Bring in Obamacare, bring in all kinds of socialism and different things. Like, you should have to be consistent with your own campaign promises. Otherwise, to me, it's invalidating the entire point. Yeah, it is a scam, and it shouldn't be what's happening. We have to get rid of lobbying, though. Let's just be honest. If we don't get rid of political lobbying, we'll never fix our country whatsoever. We have to get rid of the Jewish influence. We have to, get back to our Christian heritage. I don't really personally care if the person's white. I think in times past, it made sense that there was a tight coupling between that and religion. So that's why those laws were there. Obviously, we are pro-slavery. I'm not pro-slavery.
Well,
but
I do have a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, say the country was 60% Indian, but all those Indians were Christian. Would it still be America?
Again,
would it?
I don't know how to answer the question exactly because, I mean, it's going to be America regardless of any of those premises to me. Like, it just is America. I don't know what you mean by is it America?
Like, would it be America?
Like, if we were communist, I think we're still
America?
America. But what do you mean by that?
Like, would it be the America that people wanted to go to? America 60 years ago, America even 40 years ago. I mean, there is a certain cultural premises you got to have for the idea of a nation state. It can't just be somewhere where anyone comes to, works, and lives, and they're automatically an American. I think I really liked how the other pastor told me that he assimilated very well. I think that's a problem that we have today. I think we embrace these other cultures and disregard natural American cultures. But yeah, I don't think America would still be America if it was 60, 70% Indian, but say they were still Christian. I don't think it would be America whatsoever.
I think that if hypothetically, if Native Americans learned English,
like I'm talking about Indians from India.
Oh, you're talking about okay. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
If Indians came over and they're Christian, I mean, again, technically there would be no issue. But here's the thing. I don't have this idea that America should just be this open store for everybody to just come into. Like, my house isn't like that, right? Like, there could be my next door neighbor could be the best, godliest Christian ever, and he's not welcome to just walk into my house whenever he wants. I have a lock on the front door. And I think from a country perspective, you can't just allow anybody and everybody to just come over into your country, even if they were Christian or not. I think that, over time, every country is going to eventually blend into a particular unified culture. So it would be strange to just import 60% of anything foreign. It would definitely cause.
So you think the whole world is just going to combine into one culture? Like, say, America and the rest of the West?
No, I'm just saying a country will. But, like, here's the thing. I know people that are Indian that are Christian, And I have no problem with those people. Like, I like those people.
Yeah.
They're nice. They're clean people. But Hindus they are like worshiping false gods. They're bathing in dung over in India. Some of them are actually even bringing some of those practices to America, where they're putting dung on the doors. They don't have very much hygiene. They don't have respect for the things of God. You know, a lot of Indians, have a bad reputation for being scammers and being dishonest. And, so like, I think there's a lot of cultural problems that are really coming from a religious perspective. Even if they're not overtly religious, it's just their culture and their country is overtly Hindu. So that way they're going to have bad culture bringing with them. Like Jews. I don't think that every Jew is necessarily going to the synagogue every week. But here's the thing, if you're raised in a household where you're taught every other person is a cow, and is just goyim, and they're inferior, and you can lie, steal, cheat, and do anything to these people, and it's okay, it's acceptable, it's not a sin, it's not a bad thing. Whether they're religious or not themselves, whether they go to synagogue or not, those ideas are going to form and fashion their worldview. And so as a result, it's going to cause a lot of problems. So whether that's Hinduism, whether that's Islam, whether that's Judaism, false religion is going to make its mark on the human mind, on their cultural references. And so as a result, it's going to cause major issues. Yes, if you imported 60% of Muslims, if you brought in 60% of Jews, 60% of Africans, even if they were, quote, Christian, it's not going to be America, right? You can't import people that are barbarous or people that are not civilized into a civilized culture and they assimilate overnight. Like, that's not going to necessarily translate well. So I'm not for that. I do not believe that we should just bring in every Tom, Dick, and Harry that claims to be Christian. But at the end of the day, technically there's nothing wrong with those demographics if they were Christian. I want to give these other guys perspective on what I was saying, because I was talking for a second. Ben, importing 60% Indians or something. What are your thoughts on what I was saying?
Well, his original question is, would America change? And I think the answer is yes, it would change.
Yeah.
For sure.
Would America be America?
You could argue it's a new America at that point. It would be a different cultural identity. Now, whether or not you're okay with that,
So
is
it wouldn't
up to
be
you.
America.
It would be a different country because of the fact that you have a new identity, you have new culture coming in, it looks different. So even though there may be, in your hypothetical scenario, they're Christian, but I think from a carnal perspective, yes, it would change because the people are different. So yes, it would change. I mean, if the answer is would it change, of course it would. The question then becomes, well, are we okay with that? And the thing is, like, if you gave me two groups of people and one of them is just all minorities, but they believe the exact same as I do ideologically, and then you have a bunch of white people, but they're libtards and they're pro-fag and they hate the Bible, I'm going to identify more with the minority, even though
I agree.
They have a different superficial characteristic than me.
Yeah, I'll still eat the liberals' food, though. Like, I'd rather have the liberals' food than the Indian imports. But Pastor Oz, I know we kind of hijacked your First Amendment here a little bit, but and kind of tying it back to even the First Amendment, can we just import any religion and any group, to America because of the First Amendment?
Can we do? Are you asking is this legally? Okay.
Yeah, I'm saying, is that in the spirit of the First Amendment? Was that the whole point of the First Amendment? I don't think that's in the spirit of the country.
I think that the reason I believe this culture is downstream of religion, and America was founded by Protestants from Europe, and so of course, because it's European, yes, that is a lot of white people, and sometimes people will say, oh, you don't seem to have a problem with cultural differences between, German immigrants and Norwegian immigrants and Swedish immigrants and English immigrants during the time that our country was being founded. But that's because, for the most part, they had a common religion. That's just the world that existed at that time, is they had the common religion of Christianity. But like Ben said, like in some theoretical, different situation where all minorities are the ones believing on Christ and having fundamental Baptist doctrine, then yeah, I would definitely identify with those people. But obviously immigration is a big problem right now in America because of the cultural clash The mixing of religions is not something that's desirable for a nation. To have a strong nation or church or family or business, you need to have a common culture. You need to have a common language. You need to have a common, religion, like in a church context, of course.
Well, if you don't have a language, if you don't have a religion, do you have a country even? What
Right.
even is that? And at the end of the day, I think that here's my worry for people like Jeb and Zoomers and young people is that they oversimplify the issue that we have in America, and it's just kind of like black people bad, brown people bad, white people good. And I'm
That's
not
not
saying
all how I
I'm not
think.
saying Jeb's doing this, but I am saying that I feel like I'm seeing that online a little bit. Like I feel like I'm seeing just
That's
the-
low IQ. That's one
that
of
is
the
a low IQ,
things.
but I'm just saying, like, I feel like I'm seeing that a lot. And whether or not it's actually real people or it's just bad actors trying to like make racism a bigger issue than it is online. It is prevalent. People are, kind of coming to those conclusions. And to me, it's like we have to address it. We can't ignore it. We can't say like, oh, well, black people are committing crimes at the same rate as white people. We can't ignore that that's just not reality. We can't ignore that Indian truck drivers are causing huge accidents all over America and are causing huge issues. We can't ignore the Muslim, people that are in America don't have the same values and hate Christians and hate America. Like we can't just ignore these problems. But then I don't want to go so far to just
Right.
basically demonize 100% of them. And when we talk about Jews, I always say it's not
you
fair.
can't marginalize, you can't marginalize, especially as a Christian.
Right. And like with Jews, I like to say, you can't condemn the one Jew for the other 99%. We got to give him a little
For
bit
the
of help.
99% of Jews for the one good one or
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah.
But at the same time, it's just like it's kind of a tight walk. It's kind of a tightrope walk sometimes of just trying to help help people realize, like, look, it's not that I'm racist necessarily. In fact, I'm just not at all. But it just sounds like it because at the end of the day, you import people from India, they're going to be Hindu, and I hate Hinduism. I hate personally. I hate like things that are associated with Hinduism, their religion, their ideology,
Their food. You don't like their
I personally don't like their food at all. I don't like the smell of curry. It's personally offensive. It doesn't mean that that's a bad food, I guess.
personally offensive.
Yeah.
I like how it's not just, well, I don't like it. It personally offends him, ladies and gentlemen. Go ahead.
Well, again, I'm just saying, like, some people just don't like certain things, right? Some people don't
That's
like
okay,
tomatoes.
yeah.
Some people don't
But
like
you have every right to like or dislike whatever food you want.
McDonald's, right? Or whatever. It's just
Some people eat at
I
McDonald's.
hate In-N-Out fries. There's nothing like Californians get really mad at me for hating that particular, cuisine.
You're gonna
But
like some food, you're not gonna like others. That's just the
at
reality.
the end of the day, like whatever my personal preferences are doesn't matter. But I'm just saying the whole point that I'm trying to make here is that we have to address this tight coupling and overlap of cultural identity and religion and ethnicity and realize that, hey, for many cases, it's one for one. But we don't want to just condemn everybody. Because look, I know I have like a friend at Faith Word Baptist Church. He's black Indian that speaks German. And it's just like, and the guy's name's Moses. It's like the weirdest. He's like the weirdest person as far as just like on paper, but he's like one of the coolest guys ever. He
The
gets
news media in Germany calls him Schwarzen Hitler.
he doesn't.
Hitler.
Yeah, he had to run away because of his preaching against homosexuals or something. I think.
Hey, can I just address something in the chat real quick?
Yeah, go
Some
ahead.
people are getting concerned about this word Protestant that's being used, and I just want to clarify that when I'm using that word, I'm using the number one dictionary definition of that word, which is number one, any Western Christian who is not an adherent of a Catholic, Anglican, or Eastern church. Don't get too freaked out by that word. I know some people, when they use Protestant, they're like specifically referring to Lutherans or Calvinists or whatever. But, most people, when they use the word Protestant, they just mean non-Catholic. And our founders meant it that way as well. Real quick, one thing I want to read. In the North Carolina state constitution in 1776, it says that no person who shall deny the being of God or the truth of the Protestant religion or the divine authority either of the Old or New Testaments, or who shall hold religious principles incompatible with the freedom and safety of the state shall be capable of holding any office or place of trust or profit in the civil department within this state. So North Carolina, you had to be convinced of the truth of the Protestant religion in order to be in office. And of course, what they meant by that was regular Christian, non-Catholic. They weren't specifying some sort of denomination, which makes sense. Which makes sense in a country with so many people filled with different flavors of Christianity. I wouldn't want them to specify the exact flavor because, number one, I'm okay with our flavor being in the marketplace of ideas because I believe we have the truth and the truth is powerful. And number two, real Christians are always in the minority. And so we don't want the government to have that power.
I mean, admittedly, when you talk about the word Protestant, almost every evangelical Christian church and denomination will self-label as Protestant. It's almost only like a small number of Baptist Bride or like really a small group of independent Baptists that completely reject that labeling for the most part. I mean, I've been in many Southern Baptist churches. They all say that they're Protestant. Non-denom churches will say that they're Protestant. Most evangelicals will say they're like. We shouldn't use that term and get like nervous about it. Additionally, when it comes to the word Christian itself, people get offended by the word Christian. It's like some people, when they say Christian, they mean anything that has to do with Christ. Like literally everything, Catholic and Christian. Sometimes you ask Catholics, hey, are you Christian? They say, no, I'm Catholic. So then they make a distinction between
true words,
Christians being a Protestant, not being a Catholic. And then there's some people get offended by using the word Christian for just anything within Protestantism. And they say, no, Christian's someone that's saved. And it's like, obviously context is always dictating how you use a particular word. You shouldn't get super offended.
Obviously, I agree we're not Lutheran. Obviously, I agree we're not Calvinist. Obviously, we're not saying we're of the Protestant Reformation as independent Baptists, but I just don't get why people just freak out over that term when it just means a non-Catholic. So
well, to me, what the Protestant Reformation did is it just liberated people to worship God how they see fit, and so then God's people, along with many others, also were allowed to become their version of Christianity. I mean, 1609 is the first Baptist church on record. With John Smith in Amsterdam. Roger Williams is accredited as the first Baptist in America and, following not that far after that particular timeline. Are these guys directly responsible for the Protestant Reformation? Are they directly coming from the Protestant Reformation? Not necessarily, but the Protestant Reformation at least opened the door for that type of Christianity to thrive and for that type of Christianity to have free course, as it were, and they're taking advantage of the Protestant Reformation. Why wouldn't you? If you've been oppressed by the Catholic Church and you're not allowed to worship God as you see fit, you don't like the indulgences, you don't like them murdering William Tyndale, slitting his throat and burning him at the stake for translating the English Bible, you say, hey, I don't want that anymore. Like, I don't see why there's a problem of taking advantage of the Protestant Reformation and having your own churches that are not based on the Catholic Church. To me, Protestant, I just simplify it. Just anything that just isn't against the Catholic Church. Just anything that's just not Catholic. So obviously there's Catholic light, there's Catholic positive, there's like slightly anti-Catholic, then there's us, which we're not very pro-Catholic, but I like Catholic people. I'm just not against the religion. I'm against the religion. I know lots of Catholic people that are very nice. We've had plenty of Catholics on our show. Michael Trippi is a great guest, Catholic. I think Owen Schroyer is a Catholic too, isn't he?
Yeah, I believe so.
So we've had Catholics on our show, but at the same time, we want them to get the Baptist bias. I mean, we're not going to lie about who sponsors our show. Right. No one. But but we also bring our bias. We're not getting paid $7,000 a post here. We don't have any ad reads. We're not doing anything to conceal our bias. We are not afraid of our bias. We love our bias. We just want other people to get it. But we don't mind talking with other people, different ideas, different opinions. I like going out there. I don't want to be in an echo chamber. That's why I brought someone like Jeb on the show. Help us, someone that hasn't really been a part of our circle, just somebody that's a young guy. And I like to talk to people that have fresh perspectives. So I appreciate him coming on the show. I'm not saying that he agrees with us on everything, because probably doesn't, but one day maybe he will, as I said to the liberal.
Well, I think we need to look in the grander picture and look at the things that are really the issues in our country and the Western world. I mean, I like to say, I think we could even align, I mean, not align, but we can, stop fighting left and right, stop fighting Christian and Muslim, stop fighting black and white, and focus on the real enemy in our Western countries, which is socially degrading our societies and trying to socially engineer our societies against Christ and against natural human, what humans naturally want to do.
I really didn't have a problem with that one guy slapping bacon on the Quran this week. I
made a video on him actually, and He was Jewish, Israeli. He had bar mitzvah. He did the thing on the Wailing Wall. He was trying to put Christians and Muslims against each other, and Muslims weren't even
Jake.
a problem.
Are you talking about Jake?
I'm talking about Jake Lang. Yes, sir.
I thought I looked it up and it said that he was not Jewish.
No, yeah, he is Jewish. I got clips on my phone. If you don't believe me, I can send them to you.
I'm just saying
Jewish.
I don't know
He's
much.
trying to put
I don't know
Christians
much
and
about
Muslims
it.
against each other. Okay.
He filed some
But
$200 million lawsuit or something.
Well, how could Christians and Muslims not be against each other when Muslims are a religion that's sending people to eternal hell? Like this is the problem that I hold on real quick. This is the problem that I have with people getting a little too sucked into politics, is that we should not divorce the spiritual truths from the Bible. Like we shouldn't just throw away the spiritual truths of the Bible for our political opinions. Like here's the thing. The Bible says fight the good fight of faith. Jude is writing the epistle. He wants to write to them. He writes to them of the common salvation. He's defending the gospel. He's warning about false prophets. Galatians chapter 1 says, if anyone preaches any other gospel than that I have preached unto you, let him be accursed. As I said before, so say I now again, if any man preach any other gospel unto you than that which we have preached, let him be accursed. So the danger I see with people getting a little too sucked into politics is where we start saying things like, well, who cares about the Muslims? And I don't think LGBT
I
is that
care
big
about
of a
the Muslims
deal,
deeply. I don't think they should be in
abortion.
our country. They wouldn't be an
here's the
issue if
thing.
you scaled up and look when our country started degrading.
Well, I want to blend these ideas for a second, and I don't want to put words in y'all's mouth, but from my perspective, I agree with everything you said, Pastor Oz, and I think we need to make sure that as spiritual leaders we're combating all false religion and all false prophets. And I'm not even saying that I necessarily agree with this perspective, but I do find it may be the right move. Is that from a political perspective? So just in the context of politics, that instead of trying to basically get taken off the right course and getting distracted with racist issues or with Muslim issues or whatever, that we just try to get AIPAC out of our government. Like if we just focused in on that one issue and then come back to kind of resolving that issue. Like I use this analogy. I said, if you're on a boat and there's a guy walking around just making holes in the boat, it would be kind of you're looking at this boat and you see this hole and there's water flooding. There's flooding in, and someone says, "Hey, don't plug that hole. We need to first find the guy making the holes and tackle that issue. Then we're going to come back and start filling in the holes." I could kind of see that argument of saying, "Hey, we need to stop the bleeding before we essentially start plugging all the holes, because if we just go on plugging the holes, then it may be distracting us from," and as the protocols of the elders of learned elders of Zion say, that we'll be distracted away from our true enemy or our common enemy. So again, I don't know if that's blending these ideas or not. Is that kind of what you're saying, Jeb, or are you saying something different?
Well, I think that we wouldn't have Muslims in Western countries if we weren't fighting Israel's wars and driving these people out of our homes. And somewhere, for example, like Dearborn, Michigan, which is known as one of the Arab capitals of the U.S. and has been for a long time, they have this Israeli acting like he's a Christian white man, going in there slapping bacon, burning Quran, trying to rile up all these Muslims to put them against Christians. So Christians and Muslims continue to fight each other, exactly what Israel and the Jews want to happen, instead of focusing on the larger issue, that being Zionism and globalism that's taking over our countries.
So you just don't want another 9/11, basically, is what you're saying.
I want a 9/11?
No, I'm saying you don't want another 9/11 where
no, I don't.
Where
I don't
we get
want
distracted and we go try to find Ben's cousins and nuke them off of the planet. What do you think about this, Ben? Do you think that we could be distracted by Muslims and kind of ignore the real political issues? Or I'm just kind of curious on your perspective on this.
I just got one.
Let Jeb finish his point, and I'll jump in after him.
Yeah.
Muslims aren't the reason you have gay marriage in the West. Muslims aren't the reason you have abortions. Muslims aren't the reasons you can't afford a house as a young man. Muslims aren't the reason that there's more people are getting married at a later age in life, which means they're not ready to have kids as early. Muslims aren't the reason that Christianity is collapsing in the U.S. Muslims recognize Christ and know that Christ is going to come back. The synagogue Satan does not. The synagogue of Satan thinks that Jesus Christ, like they disregard Jesus Christ as a whole. That's all I have to say.
I agree with a lot of those points, Ben.
And they
what do you
wouldn't be in
think?
our countries if it wasn't for Israel.
I think that post 9/11, you definitely saw an anti-Islamic fervor, which, of course, we know was designed to endlessly feed the military-industrial complex and go destabilize the Middle East at the behest of Israel. So, in so much that we're going into their region and bombing them and destabilizing their governments and getting involved in these sovereign nations that have nothing to do with us for the benefit of Israel, to prop them up, to do their dirty work, as we did this year, courtesy of Donald Trump bombing the Iranian nuclear facilities for Netanyahu. You know, I would say, of course, that I'm against that. And I think when you look at it from that political angle, yeah, Islam is a giant distraction away from Zionism. It's a giant distraction from the root cause of all the bloodshed, which are wars for Zionism. Wars for Zionism. So we do need to refocus on that issue. I think separate from that, though, is the spiritual war. And from a spiritual perspective, I would say, although Judaism is worse than Islam, both of them are going to the same hell, and that Islam is a stupid religion and every Muslim is going to hell. So from a spiritual perspective, I want pastors to rip face on how stupid Islam is. From a political perspective, though, I don't want to be going into Iran. I don't want to be going into Afghanistan. I don't want to be going into Iraq and bombing these countries just because Israel said so, because the military-industrial complex said so. So I think there's two different paradigms at play here. And when it comes to politics, yes, Islam is a distraction.
What about spiritually, though, too? Ben, I want to continue that thought just for a second. I think I've preached against Islam. I've preached against Muslim stuff. But do you really think that Americans specifically are very likely to convert to Islam? Or do you think like preaching against Zionism and, you know, the infiltration of Judaism into America is probably more important to be talking about?
No, the Americans are it's extremely unlikely for them to convert to Islam. A. B. Islamicists are, I think, more likely to convert to Christianity than Jews. I mean, that's just the reality. The Muslims that I've spoken to out soul winning have been a lot friendlier. They invite me into their home. They listen to the gospel. And so, yeah, there's no question that between Judaism and Islam, one is, of course, worse.
I mean, I would love to see Pastor Oz slap some bacon on a Quran and, you know, light it on fire. And I'd love to hear you preach a sermon where you're doing that spiritually. I just want to clarify. Do you feel like there's a problem from a political perspective, kind of ignoring the Muslim? I'm not saying that we ignore the Muslim. I'm just saying politically that maybe it's not the most important issue right now. Do you really still find that that's not a very good idea? I'm just kind of curious.
Okay, I mean, if we're only speaking of things from a political standpoint, I understand your analogy of like, hey, someone's stabbing holes in the boat. Like, let's triage the most needful thing here, 100%. But obviously, like, we're pastors. We don't look at things just in a political way only. We look at things in a spiritual perspective. And, you know, like Jeb, you were mentioning that, hey, Muslims aren't giving us gay marriage. Muslims aren't giving us this and that. And you're correct on that. But here's the thing. Who's giving us that stuff is people that are deceived by the devil. So here's the thing. The devil. So here's the thing. The devil is the author of Islam. The devil is the author of Judaism. So I want to be an equal opportunity hater to every. I mean, the Bible talks about in Psalm 119, you know, because we love God's law, we hate every false way. Through thy precepts I get understanding. Therefore I hate every false way. So here's the thing. I hate Islam because Islam is blasphemous. Islam teaches that Jesus is not the Messiah, that he was just a man, And you know what? Anyone who's Muslim is going to hell.
Islam
I
respects
hate-
Jesus and says that Jesus is coming back.
No. They don't respect Jesus because Jesus is God in the flesh. And if you say that he's not the Christ, that he's not God, that is blasphemous to Jesus. They're liars. Don't listen to them. They're lying to you. But guess what? Judaism is also blasphemous and evil and satanic and wicked. It is worse, no doubt about it, because Judaism will say that Jesus is burning and boiling hot excrement. Judaism will say that Jesus is like a bastard child. But here's the thing, is that both are satanic, evil religions, and us as American Christians should stand up and be loud, vocal against both of them. You want to talk about keeping America, there should be zero tolerance or love or respect for Islam coming from Christians in America. Except, I will say this, hold on, one last thing. There's a difference between how I'm talking right now and how I preach than if I actually met a Muslim in real life. That interaction, all I'm trying to do is get them the gospel because I love them and want them to be saved. So even though I hate their false religion, I love that individual and want them to have an opportunity to believe in Christ. But from a policy perspective, of course, yeah, we don't want to support Islam or Judaism. And I think we agree that both are bad religions.
Yeah, I agree with you. But Muslims wouldn't be a problem in America or the West if we weren't supporting Israel. I mean, we gotta scale up on these issues to really win.
We agree on that. We're 100% against Israel. We're against Israel.
Yeah. But we got to scale up on why these issues are happening. Like Jake Lang, for example. Why did he go to Dearborn, Michigan, which is probably the most Muslim Arab acclimated area in America? Why didn't he go to Dallas, Texas, and do something with Hindus, or go to Minneapolis, Minnesota, where the Somalians are taking over and still carrying over their tribalistic politics? I mean, why didn't he do that? Why did he go to the most Muslim town in America, trying to rile up Christians and Muslims? Just because Israel loves it. The Jews love it when Christians and Muslims fight each other because it takes them away from the main issue.
Yeah, I mean, it
I don't want
definitely
Muslims
seems like
in America just as much as anyone else doesn't want Muslims in America.
Yeah, it seems like a stunt, and obviously he came out, I think, in the last 24 hours with a $200 million lawsuit against that city. Dearborn, Michigan, I think is recently reported as 51% Muslim or something like this. So it's like it's now the majority demographic of that area. It's definitely an area where if you're trying to stir up Muslims or cause problems or get attention, another thing that it's made a lot of publicity. So like even though like if I just go to Dearborn, Michigan and I just started throwing bacon at Muslims or something, there's no guarantee I'm actually get on all the news stations and get a bunch of publicity about it. The media is going to only put forth the agendas that they want to put forward. So you should always be skeptical, I think, of any media agendas that are being put out there and being pushed. And I think that the AIPAC issue, the Jew issue, is getting so much popularity. It has so much steam right now that they're looking for distractions. They're looking for other ways to get people riled up and get people kind of off on that other approach. At the same time, I've seen it not only just specifically from him. I've seen a lot of debates lately where people are debating Muslims. I've seen videos online of people talking positively about the Quran, bringing up, verses from the Quran and talking about converting to Islam and all this stuff. And so, I, as a pastor, would love to combat any and all false religions and to fight Muslims. And if I see them making a big impact in my area or in the world, like I think I'd probably emphasize them even more. I still bring up Islam and Muslims and their kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, I think we should, my approach is kind of a twofold. Number one is whatever the Bible emphasizes, I want to emphasize. And then number two, I kind of say whatever is the most culturally relevant to my people and my demographic, I probably emphasize just a little bit more. And, from a political perspective, because that's what the show's been about. I mean, the show is about America's Christian history, and we're talking about politics. We're talking about law. We're talking about, what should be the policy for America. I can see becoming a single issue person right now in America and just kind of focusing in on that one issue. I don't think that's necessarily the best approach just at all times or generally speaking. I think we should be more well-rounded. We should consider other issues and other problems. But at the end of the day, like I don't see how there isn't, a major threat right now of AIPAC, of Israel is influence. When you look at the presidential cabinet, it doesn't have any Muslims in it. Albeit recently, New York had, what is it, Mondavi or whatever?
Mamdani.
Yeah, Mondani or something,
Mamdani,
a communist, is now the mayor of New York. That makes me not want to go to New York City. I mean, how do you feel about visiting New York City, Ben?
Well, I wasn't exactly planning to anyway, but obviously with somebody like that now running it, it definitely decreases the chance of me going. But I will say that when it comes to this issue, it's important to recognize, though, again, the distinction between the carnal fight and the spiritual fight. And as a church member, I don't want to go to a church where, or at least this would be my preference. This would be my preference, is that I don't go to a church where only one false religion is ever preached against. Whether that's Judaism, it's just that's the only false religion that's ever preached against, or Islam, if that was the only false religion that was preached against. I think pastors like Pastor Oz was saying, he talked about how he wants to be an equal opportunity hater, and just to finish his sentence, what he's saying there is he wants to be an equal opportunity hater of false religion. And as pastors, you guys aim to be well-rounded and balanced in your preaching, so that way you are shepherding people who are themselves well-rounded and balanced, because the congregation is often a reflection of its leadership.
Well, and again, the Muslims may say, Jesus, peace be upon him, but let's make it clear, it's another Jesus. They do not believe Jesus is the Son of God. Because if you ask a Muslim, they'll say, especially even to convert to Islam, you have to say that like Allah is God and that he has no son. In the mosque there in the Holy Land, they have inscribed
the Temple of the Rock.
Yeah, the Temple of the Rock. They have inscribed up there that God has no son. Not in English,
like,
obviously.
it is not
it's in
fit
Arabic.
for God to have a son. Speak no
Right.
longer foolishly. It is not fit for God to have a son.
So
Allahu Akbar!
they deny the Son of God, which the Bible's clear that if you deny the Son of God, if you deny the Son, you have not the Father. So they have a false religion. It came hundreds of years after the gospel of Jesus Christ. Muhammad, is someone who claims to be visited by an angel. But as referenced in Galatians chapter 1, I think Pastor Osley quoted this, if somebody's preaching another gospel, let them be accursed. Additionally, he was illiterate, he was a pedophile. Their religion is a religion where, I saw in a recent debate, they're talking about how many first cousin marriages are happening in Islam, and they've caused just an IQ just downfall to their entire demographic. Islam is a stupid religion for stupid people. And what they need to do is they need to believe in Jesus Christ and become wise. And they need to put their faith in Jesus Christ as the Son of God, not as a prophet, but as the Son of God. He is a prophet, but he's more than a prophet. He is the Son of God, and they have to put their trust in his death, burial, and resurrection as the only payment for their sin. Islamicists do not believe in the forgiveness of sin through the blood of Jesus Christ, but rather they are trusting in their works. They believe works will get them to heaven. And so it's a complete false religion. All religions other than, Christianity is a false religion, whether it be Hinduism, Catholicism. I think that a lot of people can sometimes become a single issue person. They just only hate Catholics, or they only hate Jews, or they only hate Hindus, or they only hate, Muslims, or they only hate one specific group. And, we should love the truth and hate all lies at the end of the day. I do think politically, I don't think we've been captured by Hindus. I don't think that politically we've been captured by agnostics. I don't think that we've been captured by other, Chinese folk religions.
IT department's been captured by Hindus.
Now, well, that's a different argument. When it comes to tech, they've lost 200,000 jobs. I wouldn't be surprised if with the H-1B visas, they import a whole bunch of Indians and take away a lot of jobs from Americans. And I think that's a horrific issue, and we need to talk about that. And, maybe that means that we should talk about Hinduism more. Maybe that we should bring that up as an issue and not just only Judaism. But at the end of the day,
we need to look on why the Indians are coming over and who's bringing them in.
I still agree that solving the root issue sometimes is an important thing. When you have cancer or you have a serious illness, when you're bleeding, sometimes it's important to find the root cause before you address all.
Well, if you really want to scale up to the very top, though, then it would be Satan, because Satan is the originator of, he's the father of lies. He's the one
Well,
who,
we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual wickedness in high places.
he is the true root cause.
But
is my
how
point.
do I
Satan
do that?
is the true root cause.
Okay, well, go attack Satan real quick.
I
Satan
would
and
do
the
so by
synagogue
attacking
Satan.
every one of his ideologies. And
Yeah,
there's
but
a
wouldn't
heck
you
of a lot
wouldn't
of
you
different
attack
ideologies
his most
out there.
closest
Devil, he will
ministers?
flee from you.
What was that, Pastor Oz?
Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. I was thinking of Ephesians 6:12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Ben, what you just said about Satan being at the top, 2 Corinthians 4, verse 3 says, "But if our gospel be hid, it is hid to them that are lost, in whom the God of this world," that's the devil, "hath blinded the minds of them which believe not, lest the light of the glorious gospel of Christ, who is the image of God, should shine unto them." So the God of this world, this little g God, is the devil, and anyone who is not saved is being led by him, is walking in his ways. I want to read one more verse. 2 Corinthians 11, verse 3 says, "But I fear lest by any means, as the serpent beguiled Eve through his subtlety, so your minds should be corrupted from the simplicity that is in Christ. For if he that cometh preacheth another Jesus, whom we have not preached, or if ye receive another spirit, which ye have not received, or another gospel, which ye have not accepted, ye might bear well with him." I think the devil would love to convince people that, Muslims are okay. And I'm not saying you're saying Muslims are okay, Jeb. I'm just saying people in general. Muslims are okay because they respect Jesus and they say, peace be upon him when they say his name. But the Bible's warning us about people preaching another Jesus. And just because someone is giving honor to the name Jesus does not mean it's the Jesus of the Bible, right? You got Mormonism that teaches a different Jesus, one that was a created being, that was the brother of Satan, one that came to America and preached to the Native Americans, right? So just because someone says that they're honoring Jesus, that does not mean that they're actually honoring the God man, Jesus Christ.
But they still honor Jesus more than Jews or Hindus. That's just the reality of it.
Oh, it's a different
To me-
Jesus,
to-
bro.
to me, it's
they
yeah.
believe that he didn't die
They
on the
honor
cross.
Jesus more than they honor
you
Jesus.
don't-
Yeah,
more
but
than
it's just
other
it's just
religions.
like it's just like a
Jesus.
different.
I know you're going to
person.
disagree with me. I don't expect everyone to agree with
Yeah.
me.
I mean, I want to read some comments here because our chat's honestly been pretty lit on this. So Natty Rain says, Muslims are like when you mix really stupid people with false religion. Natty Rain says, Jews are like when you mix really manipulative people with false religion. M. Lugo 40 says, the wicked one sowed the tares, which are Muslims, Jews, and Hindus. We also have Sanderson 1611 saying, going after only Jews all day, every day gets boring. Sanderson said, Jews are not the root cause. Satan is the root cause. The Jews are just his pawns. He also said, Sanderson 1611 said, Satan is a dragon with 7 heads, not one single head. Jews are one of the heads. Islam is another head. Catholicism is another head, etc. That's kind of an interesting idea on the dragon specifically. We've had a lot of different comments in here. Jesus Lover 122, Islam spread by conquest, the sword, not by evangelism. Not because they have the truth on their side or the Holy Spirit working. No, they spread it by fear. OT the Baptist says Mormons are white. That is true. M. Lugos 40 says the description of Jesus is what matters. Also, let's see. Natty Rain says they say Jesus should apologize to the Father. I don't know if he's talking about Muslims there. I don't know if that. You understand that comment?
I didn't get it.
Maybe you can help us out on what he meant by that. But when it comes to Islam, I mean, it's the worst literature ever. The Quran is the worst literature ever. I've met Muslim people that seem friendly, but it seems like it might be fake. I've had some bad interactions with them from a business perspective, but I'm not saying that's all of them necessarily. But at the end of the day, obviously false religion is going to breed a bad product. And, when it comes to anybody, I think when it comes to Muslims, there's definitely a little bit of stereotyping that goes into the 9/11 bombers is kind of like that's what all Muslims are like. But I have met, Muslims that received the gospel of Jesus Christ and got saved. And so, I don't want to demonize every single person that comes from the Middle East, but by and large, they're a very unreceptive group of people. They definitely do not believe the same as us on Jesus. Most of the times when I talk to a Muslim, the first thing he'll do is he'll antagonize me and say, "Where did Jesus say that he's God?" That's like the first thing that comes out of their mouth, is they just say, like, where does the Bible say, that Jesus said, quote, "I am God"? And I'll often show them many different verses that show that he said that he is the Son of God, and references alluding to his deity. You even have God the Father in Hebrews chapter 1 saying, "Unto the Son he saith, Thy throne, O God, is forever and ever." But they don't really believe in the Bible by and large, just their religion. And so it's very difficult to get Muslims saved. I do want them to be saved. And I think that we should call out all of these false religions, because ultimately, if you're the nicest Muslim in the world, you're going to go to the same hell that the most disgusting Jew, Christ-rejecting Antichrist, is going to. So, hell is an equal opportunist as well. It'll take every Muslim, Hindu, even Christians that aren't saved, it'll take all of them to hell, and we need to preach against all of it. As a preacher, as a pastor, I'm not very political. I'm not preaching, politics from my pulpit. I'm preaching the Word of God. I'm preaching the Bible. I do find politics as an interesting subject, and I try to sometimes think about it from a pragmatic perspective, because obviously, ideally, I would love for America to just snap its fingers and just kind of like be overtly Christian. I don't think that that's real. And I remember, I don't really like Dinesh D'Souza as much in the late, but I remember him just saying like, hey, it's usually not the fundamentalists that are accomplishing things, but it's the people that are at least a little bit more pragmatic. And I do disagree with that philosophy, because I think that us fundamentalists do accomplish something. We drag the Overton window over to where they can end up accomplishing something. But at the end of the day, in a pragmatic conversation, do you feel like, Ben, that sometimes you might have a different hat on from a politics perspective versus what the church is going to be doing?
Yes.
Or do you feel like it has to be an overlap?
And I mean, it just depends. Like, obviously, there's going to be certain lines that I'm never going to cross in the name of
you voted for
pragmatism.
Trump.
Yeah, so obviously, I have a different standard in terms of who I would support for office. That's going to be distinct from anything spiritual. So there is a distinction there, but then there is a line that I wouldn't cross. So, somebody who's supporting abortion, homosexuality to a crazy degree, that kind of thing, the left obviously would cross that line. So I think that there definitely is a distinction there between what you're trying to accomplish. And in terms of politics, often it is a lesser of two evils scenario. I did participate in that process of choosing the lesser of two evils. I actually regret it, because I think Trump has turned out to be a huge disappointment. And, obviously the bombing of Iran and pushing the Zionism to a crazy degree, the Epstein files fiasco and all the rest of it, he has been an absolute disappointment in my mind. So, but no, there definitely is a difference there.
We've been going on a marathon here. I kind of want to just bring it back and then land the plane, or as Ben would do, just crash it into a couple buildings. But, we've been talking about at the beginning of the show, American history. And we kind of had, from a state level, you had to profess faith in Jesus Christ to be in any kind of position of authority. I don't know that would actually even solve our problems right now, because I feel like a lot of our elected officials still, profess faith in Jesus or some like version of Christian. It's just they have AIPAC handlers and there's all this lobbying and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I think if we combined a few different factors, if we brought back some of the colonial perspective, we said, hey, we're a Christian nation. We're not going to support foreign interests. We're not going to support, Israel, and we're not going to give them money. We're going to trade with all. I'm not saying that we have to nuke anybody. I'm just saying we're just going to cut off funding from all and just say, hey, we're going to be agnostic. We're going to do our thing. The Monroe Doctrine, right? We're just going to be ourselves. We're going to be Christian. And we're going to basically give people, an opportunity to either respect our Christian laws or leave. She can leave or whatever type of a doctrine. And bringing back, some of the things we brought up, men voting. In my mind, again, this is kind of too difficult of a question. I now that I'm realizing, but I'm just saying, like, if we eliminate the 19th Amendment, basically, we get rid of women voting, we get rid of the 14th Amendment, or at least modify it to where the states can again say, hey, you have to profess faith in Jesus and basically be a Christian to be in leadership, and we declare ourselves as a Christian nation, getting rid of political lobbying. Do you feel like that would actually heal our nation, could get us back on track? And again, the government's not going to need to be perfect, but I'm just saying, is America too far gone? Or if we made some of these changes, could we just continually, perpetuate and kick the can down the road and kind of thrive again? I kind of want to go round table and then we'll kind of land the plane, but we'll start with Jeb. What do you think about those ideas?
Yeah, well, I think if women didn't vote, honestly, I think women vote for dumb stuff. I think they're easier manipulated, think more emotionally. I think that would solve a lot of stuff. Only one vote per household, honestly. Yeah, so if there's a lot of things, if we just kind of scale up the issue. I know I've said that more than once. If we scale up the issue and then we stop focusing on exceptions to the rule and more or less the actual rule, if that makes sense. I can elaborate on that one, though, if you want me to do that.
Well, 19th Amendment's a good start, but if you could just do one thing politically, if you could make one change.
If I could do one thing politically.
What would be, in your mind, maybe the thing you'd want to do the most? And that's kind of tough on the spot. Maybe you hadn't thought about it, but.
It is. If I could do one thing. I don't know. I think there's so much corruption in our government. I truly hope there is a political solution to fix our government. I think once my generation gets into power, we will. I genuinely believe most of Gen Z men think like I do. They might not be able to articulate it as well, but I would say 70% of Gen Z men think like I do. And they try to come to the most rational, intellectual conclusion. So the thing that I would do, if we could change one thing, probably stop immigration for at least 20 to 10 years. And not allow women to vote. Honestly. Immigration, though.
Do you think term limits? What about term limits for Congress so that the younger generation could get in there sooner? Would that?
Yeah, I agree. Term limits would be really good.
Okay. Ben, going back to the broader question, do you think America could be fixed with some of those adjustments? And I'm not saying like it's going to be perfect. I'm just saying, like, could it get to a point where we're back on a pretty good trajectory?
I think if we implemented just one of those, and I know Jeb already brought it up, but repealing the 19th Amendment would make it to where some insane, crazy, libtard freak would never get elected again, because it's just a simple cursory gander at the voting rolls will show you that when you remove women from the equation entirely, leftists have no chance at all. And I think leftism is insidious, it is evil, it is a mental illness, and to remove that totally by way of just limiting the number of people who could vote and frankly speaking, it's not just the fact that you're limiting, but you're also making it to where it actually makes sense. You bring up landowning men. These are guys who have the most stake in our country, so it makes more sense anyway. And then you remove the ability for women to vote with their emotions and elect some of the worst leaders imaginable. So I'll just hyper-focus on that one point that you brought up there.
Sounds like you just hate women, but
seems like it.
I'm going to go, Pastor Oz. What do you think about overhauling our country? Can we kind of roll things back? Can we get back to what we were? What is your viewpoint on this?
I think there's a couple different hurdles, I guess, if we're just talking about the political perspective of things for a second. One is winning hearts and minds, which I feel like we've already done. My generation is very conservative. My generation is going back to church more than previous generations have at our age. Like, there's some very positive trends amongst people our age, which is great. So there's winning hearts and minds, and then there's getting corruption out of the institutions, which is the way harder part. And that's going to be dealing with issues like AIPAC, lobbying, foreign influence. Those are some of, I think, the biggest hurdles to overcome. I don't know. I mean, I'm not claiming to have the best solution for those things because, politics for me, just to be transparent, it's just something that's a hobby. It's something that I kind of just like to nerd out about and read about. And I had so much more material to share, just so the audience, if the audience is interested in this kind of stuff, I just wanted to recommend a couple of books. This is a book. Let me see if I can get it on my camera. This is a book called The Churching of America, The Religious History from 1776 to 2005. That's a great book. There's another one here called America's Revolutionary Mind, and it's basically the founding fathers' thoughts behind what they wrote in the Declaration. I found that really interesting. There's another good book called An Inquiry into the Religious and Moral Character of the American Government by Senator Theodore Friendly-Hewson, if anyone's interested in that kind of stuff. But my final comments, I just want to say this is like, and Jeb, I really like you, man. I think you're, someone who has a lot of zeal, and I love aviation too. I think it's cool you're doing that. So please don't take anything I'm saying like personally against you. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not.
Some of it may apply to you, whatever. But here's the thing is I just worry though for people that are in our generation, Gen Z, that are really into politics. My worry for them is that Gen Z doesn't seem to be exalting the Bible, God's commandments, the words of Jesus Christ above our own political ideologies and talking points and things like that. And I just think that we need to make sure that we realize that the kingdom of God is what's most important. Jesus said, oh man, I lost that verse. He said, let me go back to it real quick. I'm sorry. In John 18:36, Jesus answered, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then would my servants fight that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now is my kingdom not from hence. So it's like, obviously, I love America. I love America. I'm thankful to God that I live in America. It's the best country. It's worth fighting for. I'm for working on some of these solutions. But at the end of the day, the Bible says, righteousness exalteth a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. And we will be cursed by God if we turn a blind eye at sin and act like it's not a big deal. Righteousness exalts a nation, and it doesn't matter what type of policies we have. It doesn't matter what kind of people we have in office. If God's blessing is not on our nation, then all of that is worthless. I'm not saying those things are not good to fight for, but if God is cursing us and angry at us for not being righteous, then all of that is a moot point. Okay? Here's one last verse I want to give, and then I'll call it for this evening. But just listen to this verse in 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verse 14. The Bible says, if my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin, will heal their land. So I just want to encourage Gen Z not to let political ideology trump the Bible. Don't sit here and think like, well, we don't really have to care that much about fags. We don't really care that much about homosexuality and faggots buying children and liberals murdering. I'm not saying you. I'm saying Gen Z. Okay. And liberals just murdering their babies and like, forget about that. We just got to care about Israel only. No, you got to scale up these issues. I like that term. We got to scale up these issues and realize the devil is the enemy. It's not black people. It's not Indians. It's not all these things. The devil is the enemy. And you know what? The devil has 7 heads. He comes at you in a lot of different ways. And I just think that we need to be vigilant as Christians and not just be one-issue people. Really be vigilant, realizing that the devil's going to come after us in all sorts of different ways. Go ahead, Pastor Shelley.
Yeah, when it comes to some of the things that you were saying, I think what's important to kind of combat is the idea that you can have the right solution, but if you're not able to implement it, then what's the point? So we could change all the laws and go back to what they were, and we could make ourselves a Christian nation, or we could just take some good people and just put them into office. But if culturally we're not actually caring what God says, if we're not actually reading the Bible, if we're not actually doing what's right, it's not going to have an impact. So, like you said, righteousness exalteth the nation. I'm not saying that this is 100%, but I did hear someone say, the Jews aren't necessarily your problem. Sin is your problem. because, and again, this is the argument they were making. They were saying, that they're in charge of Hollywood and they're in charge of the smut and the porn and whatever. It's like, but you don't have to watch that. You don't have to pay for it. You don't have to go and get an OnlyFans subscription. Yeah, they're in charge of the banks, but you don't have to go get high interest loans. You don't have to get high interest credit cards. You don't have to go and just get all of these things that are out there that they're offering to you. You don't have to drink alcohol. You don't have to do drugs. And so in some ways, you're still in control. You're still in the driver's seat. And I think if a generation rises up and says, hey, we're not going to drink alcohol, we're not going to subscribe to OnlyFans, we're not going to do these things, like you would at least cripple their industry somewhat, or at least you would take away some of their influence. People just stopped watching the mainstream media completely, then they have no more power over the American people. And so in some ways, we're giving them power through our sinful means, through the things that we're doing. And so we do need people to get back to the Bible and the Word of God. Obviously, Christian churches endorsing Zionism is just horrific. We have to defeat Zionism, and we have to get Christians back to being Christian again and recognizing who the synagogue of Satan is, so that then politically we don't want a AIPAC supported politician. We want people to realize why these things are bad and to have the right attitudes. And we're not going to be perfect. People aren't going to be perfect. Young people, I'm not saying that, hey, if you go out and get a loan, you're bad or something like that. Obviously, we all are going to have to use loans. We're all going to have to be a part of this system. I wish the federal government would offer zero interest loans. They should. They should invest in the American people. They should combat what the Fed is doing. They should eliminate the Fed in whatever ways they can, or at least take them out of the picture. But at the end of the day, when it comes to these issues, I like what Pastor Oz said. We need to get back to the things of God. We need to get to, preaching the Word of God. We have to get out and get people saved. We have to turn people to righteousness. We have to get them the King James Bible. And I think that the young generation is a smart generation. I think they're fed up with a lot of the lies. And, I think that we need people that are sincere and genuine to go out there and reach them with something sincere. I think that's why they're going to Catholicism, to Orthodox, to other religions, because they've had traditionally the same standards. Maybe they haven't evolved much. And, we need some consistency out there. We need people to go out there and fight and contend with the Baptist bias. I really want to thank our crew. I want to thank our guests tonight. I think there's a lot more we could say on this topic. In fact, we were thinking about making an entire documentary on this issue. I know Pastor Oz would love to share way more information on this subject because there's so much. Of course, thank you to our audience who's been watching. Lots of spicy comments in the bank. Let's be thankful this week for the country we have, even though it's got some serious problems, some serious issues, and we need to address them. But hey, praise God, we have an opportunity to still fight for our country. We still have an opportunity to fight for the gospel. I want to give you one last chance here for a second, Ben. Do you want to say something before we close the show?
No, you bring up Thanksgiving. I'm thankful to be here in the United States. I'm thankful to be able to be part of our church and to go out and reach the lost and to be part of a church that's willing to rip face on sin and to preach the entire Bible, because ultimately that is how we fix America, the church house. And so we need more churches, we need more Christians to take their faith seriously and to go out and do something great for God to restore America to the principles that it was once founded on. So appreciate you having me.
Yeah, I'm going to give a couple shout outs to our chat. Anchor Baptist Church, you got to check them out, Oklahoma City. You can check out Jeb on X, Jeb Ba. Maybe we can put him in there. If possible, we might give him just a chance to say one more thing. Can we let him give us a sign off real quick? Tell us how we can follow you, Jeb.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on the show. I had a really great time, even though we disagree on some stuff. But I think it's important to talk to everyone. I always try to talk to everyone. You guys can check out my Instagram, TikTok, X. It should just all be jeb.ba. Jeb.ba. I'm biggest on Instagram right now if you guys want to check that one out.
Well, thanks again for coming on the show and letting your ideas be challenged. We like to have our ideas challenged as well.
Thank you.
And I love having fresh perspectives. Some other comments in here. J Tank says landowners and 1 vote per household. I agree wholeheartedly on that. Sanderson 1611. What about an upper limit on voting to stop boomers from voting? And then he put LOL. I don't know. It kind of felt like it didn't feel like a joke. It kind of felt a little real for me. Maybe they shouldn't vote because they won't have to live with the consequences. I mean, that's actually, I didn't think about it, but that actually kind of makes a little bit of sense. Like, do you really want someone that's like literally about to die to be voting for the future? I mean, you have to say that that's not necessarily a bad consideration. Now, this is one thing, this stupid idea, Mitochondrian 81. Read Article 11 from the Treaty of Tripoli for the answer. This is some stupid lie that keeps being spread. The Treaty of Tripoli is just some document that was ratified by the U.S. saying like, oh, we've never been a Christian nation or whatever. But here's the thing. It's a treaty that was actually originally in Arabic that then got translated by someone, and that translation was actually inaccurate. It didn't even contain that particular language, but it still was recognized by the government. But then many people came out and said, like, why in the world would we do this? Our country's obviously Christian. I mean, who could watch this show and see all the laws of all the colonies, all the things that we've been evidencing, and then be like, yeah, we weren't a Christian nation in any sense? Like, this is just such a low IQ position. And someone shared this on my X, that same thing, and then I go look, it's like a Jew account. And I'm like, oh, okay, of course, it's some kind of Jew account or something like that. But thanks again, Pastor Oz. Thanks again, Jeb, for being on the show. Thanks to our audience. I hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving. I hope you continue to thank God for the country we have. And, you know, if we're going to make it better, we got to make sure people get the Baptist bias.